is Wilson Majebele. I'm the lecturer in the Department of Public Administration in the Faculty of Management and Law. Earlier on, when we were meeting the DM that side, Ms. Pillay, I was worried by the color of your dress and the book that I'm holding to say, DM, we are not by any chance representing any other political formation. My diary is from Lepelle, Northern Water. And then for my madam to be dressed like that is that she must be bright and be visible in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting time, I will want to call the choir of the university to stand up and lead us in singing the national anthem while we are all standing. And the tradition will be, gentlemen will take off our hat or our beret, doctors. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Choir, over to you. Thank you, choir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I was just worried because I know when it comes to that other language part, without mentioning it, we always mumble, and myself mumbling. But I'm happy that it shows patriotism, that as a country we are able to sing our national anthem very well. Without the waste of time, ladies and gentlemen, I will want to appeal to you, based on the developments that we just got on the briefing session, and the engagement of our prestigious guest, the DM himself, his engagement and from his office. He might not be here for the rest of the day with us, so there's some changes in terms of our time slots in our program. We'll try to shorten it, so work with me as guests, as panel members, as students and colleagues, as and when we also come to question and answers. But we'll try to make it to be a memorable day for ourselves. Without wasting time, let me call Prof. Selepe MM to come and do a welcome remark. Prof, over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to you all. Mr. Majebele has already introduced me. So it is my absolute pleasure and honor to stand before you today as we gather for this public lecture. We are truly blessed and excited to have everyone here. First and foremost, I would like to welcome our distinguished guest, Honorable Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, CoGTA, Dr. Namane Dickson Masemola and his entourage. Our distinguished panelists. Firstly, we have His Majesty Kgoshi Malesela Solomon Dikgale, and on behalf of the Honorable MEC Makamo, we have Mr. Dick Mushwana, who is the Director in the Performance Monitoring Evaluation Unit at CoGTA, Limpopo. So, these distinguished guests of ours have taken the time to grace us with their presence today. And as the University of Limpopo, with specific reference to the Department of Public Administration, I must say we are filled with unspeakable joy to have you here today. I would also like to welcome our Executive Dean in the Faculty of Management and Law, Professor O.S. Sibanda, our Acting Director who's standing in for the Director of the school, Professor Koma, Professor N.J. Mukwili, and our HOD in the Department of Public Administration, Ms. R.M. Pillay. Not forgetting our dedicated colleagues from the Department of Public Administration and other departments who made it possible for this event to take place, particularly the Department of Marketing and Security. I thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, let us today host this public lecture under our theme, Reimagining Development Local Government in South Africa, the Reform Agenda and Future Vision of 2026 Promulgated White Paper in Local Government. By so doing, ladies and gents, allow me to welcome Professor N.J. Mukwili to come and give us the purpose of why are we gathered here today. Thank you, Prof. Over to you.
Thank you so much and good morning. Yeah, it's still morning. I would like to extend my warm greetings to our Vice Chancellor and Principal, Dr. Jeffrey Mabelebele, in absentia, and our Executive Dean of Faculty of Management and Law, Professor O.S. Sibanda. Also, I would like to greet our keynote speaker, Dr. Dickson Namane Masemola. I'm not sure the sequence because I heard Professor saying Namane Dickson, so apology if I missed the sequence. He's the Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Kitumedishe Kgoshi Malesela Solomon Dikgale mong mabur thobela. Kitumedishe, one of my students, I think it will be an injustice not to greet him. He's the Deputy Director. I forgot the name, but he is our student, and we really appreciate him. Is Donald Mukhotu, and I think he's from Limpopo. So we really agree. And all the distinguished guests, but we greet you. We greet you. I would also like to appreciate the HOD of Public Administration, Ms. Pillay, and his team and her team for assembling such an inspiring and a beautiful event. It is through your leadership that we really appreciate such kind of a gathering. This is because the event is born from the backdrop of some of the school strategic management planning, where we resolved that School of Economics and Management should pioneer thought leadership engagement. And to this date, public administration this year has already scheduled 2, and we really appreciate that, because we understand that students should not leave, especially students of public administration, should not leave the university without interacting with the minister, without interacting with the deputy minister, the councillor, and all the public officials that actually are aligned with their scope of their qualification. So we really appreciate that. The theme, Reimagining Developmental Local Government in South Africa, the Reform Agenda and Future Vision of the 2026 Promulgated White Paper on Local Government. It's important because it opens engagement to address some of the contemporaneous challenges that are facing local government to date. The public lecture should be able to explore visions and key reform proposal and outline in the amalgamated white paper on local government. Further enhance understanding on policy development processes, the evidence-based and governance challenges that inform proposed reform. We need to initiate and strengthen partnership to support successful implementation of local government reform and advance democratic developmental governance. Maybe, or we need to ensure that such kind of partnerships are formalized in a form of MOUs, so that the university and the student and the university at large and Limpopo will be able to benefit from that. So with that said, I wish everyone engaging and stimulating discussion. I thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Indeed, everybody that is, or everyone that is in the house today can bear testimony to say, as a varsity, we are making a milestone. If we can produce people that are working in the office of the DM, who said, we are not going to produce the president tomorrow. Oh, by the way, the president was a student here. Am I right? And without mentioning or revealing the academic route of other politicians, somebody who is going to speak to us today is also a product of this university. So I'm impressed. So as a university, we are making milestones. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting time again, allow me to call our Dean of the Faculty of Law and Management, Prof. Sibanda, to the stage. Prof, over to you.
Thank you, Program Director. I'm tempted of saying protocol observed, but I would not say that. But just to say to Coach Shirihale and our DM, Honorable Dr. Masemola, allow me to present what I was asked to present, that is the academic reflection to this particular guest lecture. But then what I can say is that this particular moment, in particular the white paper on local government, and more specifically on what is the reform agenda is all about and the future vision, it gives us ample time to reflect how is this going to impact, to affect, and basically to redirect the trajectory of academic institutions. For us as academics, however, there's another important question to this particular paper. What does this reform agenda mean for the future of public administration and public affairs education? Therefore, my reflection will at least be around the paper itself, not the politics around the service delivery. With that said, my first point would be really the paper emphasize or ask us to move beyond the notion of simply fixing municipalities. It is basically systematic in its diagnosis. It identifies interconnected challenges involving political leadership, administrative capability, municipal finance, service delivery, infrastructure, community relations, good that now we have Baba Hoshin here, spatial development, and economic performance. That is the importance of this particular paper. But then it is also a direct lesson for us as universities. Public administration cannot simply be about understanding government structures and administrative procedures. It must be about implementation, problem solving, adaptation and delivery. Public administrator of the future must therefore be able to ask not only the question, what policies should government adopt, but must also ask the question, or answer the question, how will that policy be implemented, by whom, with what resources, and how will we know whether this is working as the new policy? Also, the second point, I'll just skim over some of the issues from the paper as I reflect. It is about the second theme that you can get from the white paper, a more coherent local government system. And gentlemen, seeks to strengthen cooperative governance by moving beyond merely coordinating meetings, forums, towards responsibilities that are clearer, enforceable commitments, performance monitoring, and earlier corrective action. This has significant implication for our academic programs, particularly for the students of public administration and public affairs who are here. The other third theme, the issue would be administrative capability and professionalism of those that are at the helm of municipal or local municipal governance. The white paper proposes an administrative system that is depoliticized, capable and digital. And we hope that our teaching also as universities does take that into cognizance. But then most importantly for me, the issue of participation, moving from participation to collaboration and partnership. The changing relationship between government and its citizens can never be overlooked. The white paper, when you also read it carefully, it moves towards conception of local democracy based not merely on participation, but on collaboration and partnering between those that are involved. Public affairs as a discipline for us as universities should increasingly become the study and practice of how government works, communities, business and civil society will work together to address public problems. And I would just want to move towards concluding. If I was given a lot of time, like the DM is going to be given, I will speak for 1 hour, but I'll make it short. And then it says to the following, that now we must reimagine our academic offering as a university, this particular white paper. It is this particular point that I believe the white paper, ladies and gentlemen, is significant to our university. It provides us with the opportunity to reimagine our academic offering. Our future programs in public administration and public affairs should increasingly develop a system where we are more concerned about governance and systems leadership, professional public management, digital government and data, public finance and service delivery, citizens that are engaged. And when you say citizens, I'm not saying only those that are from urban areas. We do have, ladies and gentlemen, citizens in our rural areas and villages. We must never forget that. It means we must rethink how we teach and what we teach. And then allow me, DM in particular, to leave the stage with the following. The question before us, therefore, is not only what kind of local government South Africa needs, it is also what kind of public professionals we must educate to make that local government possible as a university. Since we have the administration of public or Republic of South Africa here present, allow me also, DM, to end with the following. The 2026 white paper's vision of responsive, accountable, and citizen-centered local government must be understood against the persistent, judicially recognized failures of municipalities to fulfill their constitutional obligations. Of course, I'm a lawyer, I was going to speak about that. In the case, for instance, of Saziwa versus Mhlonto local municipality, the 2026 case, the Constitutional Court demonstrated that municipalities cannot remain unresponsive when communities face urgent and basic needs. Similarly, the case of Mafuve Business Forum versus Premier of the Province of the Free State. The High Court confronted persistent failures in service delivery, financial management, and environmental protection. These cases demonstrate that the central challenge for the contemporary local government is not simply the formulation of progressive policies, but ensuring that constitutional principles of responsiveness, accountability, and service delivery are implemented in practice. Minister, if the reimagined local government administration is to be effective, but then to be effective still will rely on court-ordered actions, then you can agree with me, there would be no need for those that are currently in those positions to remain there. And I want to appreciate what your division did in terms of this particular white paper. At one point, we engaged with it as this particular faculty. It is of very great importance and significance in our academic offerings. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Well said indeed, Prof. From our research topics and projects, this white paper is going to lead us and give us a green light. Yes, we need to ensure that as students and lecturers from now on, we look into the issues of partnerships, and then we also ensure that our communities are taken into consideration. So the whole theme of community-centered need to be taken into cognizance. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting any more time, allow me to call Ms. Pillay, the HOD, to come and introduce to us our keynote esteemed guest speaker. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm worried about my height. I'm not sure if I'm visible. Or should I have just remained on my seat? Okay, let me start by greeting our Vice Chancellor and Principal in absentia, Dr. Jeffrey Mabelebele, our Dean, Faculty Dean, Prof. O.S. Sibanda, Director of the school in absentia, Professor Goma, Prof. Mokwili, representing Prof. Goma, our esteemed guest, students, Bemabu Khoshidi Tobela, good morning, and how are you? Thank you very much. I wanted that because the silence is too loud in the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, my task is simple. It is a privilege and honor to introduce the keynote speaker for the day. I'm introducing a seasoned political leader and a public servant with an illustrious career spanning over 3 decades in governance, political leadership, and community development. He currently serves as the Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in the Republic of South Africa and is a member of Parliament. Ladies and gentlemen, the guest speaker's public service journey began in the anti-apartheid youth movements of the 1980s, where he played an active role in various community and political organizations. He has since held several senior leadership positions in the African National Congress, including the Deputy Provincial Chairperson of the ANC in the Limpopo province, the Chairperson of Sekhukhune region, and currently serves as the member of the ANC NEC, where he is currently the chair of the local government intervention team and the convener of the NEC deployees to KwaZulu-Natal. Ladies and gentlemen, in government, he has served in multiple executive roles within the Limpopo provincial government, including as the MEC for Education, Public Works, Social Development, and Transport and Community Safety. Ladies and gentlemen, he has also served as the MEC in the Premier's office, responsible for policy and governance, and he has acted as the Premier on several occasions. I'm introducing a founding executive mayor of Sekhukhune District Municipality, whom played a very pivotal role in championing rural development and integrated governance. He has also contributed significantly to the South African Local Government Association known as SALGA, where he served in various leadership capacities, including Deputy Secretary General and Chairperson of SALGA Limpopo. He has represented South Africa in international forums on local government and having participated in missions to over 30 countries and serving on executive structures of organizations such as United Cities and local government. He holds a PhD in public administration from the University of Limpopo, our alumni, with a thesis focused on impact of leadership on socioeconomic development in municipality. His academic credentials further include Master in Public Management, a Bachelor in Arts in Politics and Public Administration, a Bachelor of Business Administration, and several executive and governance qualifications from Wits Business School and the University of Pretoria. Ladies and gentlemen, the speaker continues to be driven by his commitment to ethical leadership, community empowerment, and advancing developmental local government in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, let's clap our hands for the Honorable Dr. Namane Dickson Masemola, the Deputy Speaker of CoGTA, Republic of South Africa.
Shake his hand and Ladies and gentlemen, I was tempted when I hear the biography there. Choir, please let's stand and give an item to welcome the DM to the stage. DM, unfortunately, we are not in that meeting of ours. I was going to Shire in Goma, but for now, choir, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Director of the program. Words of greetings to Professor Mabilibili, Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of Limpopo. All the senior academics who have been introduced earlier on, I want to say to all of you, words of greetings, my colleagues, Professor Slepe Sibanda, Professor Mukwele, Professor Pillay, Mashamaite, and Professor Nkuna, and other senior academics who are here in your various responsibilities here in the University of Limpopo. Your Royal Highness, Kgoshi Dikgale, ke a tamiša mkone, le bao ba go felegeditšego go tšwa bogoši bja bakone ka tlase ga pušo ya gago. Ke kwa ke hlompegile kudu go ba le wena le gone mo re tlo leka go hlaba tlou ka diloka re tsenya letsogo seatleng sa mašianoke re bona gore re tla boa leng. Words of greetings to my colleagues from the National Department of CoGTA who have been introduced earlier on in the briefing session. But for purposes of this session here, I think it's important to appreciate the presence of Sesimali Jeng, who is not just one of us, but the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Matamela Sil Ramaphosa, found it very important to give this outstanding South African a very serious responsibility in the affairs of the finances of the Republic. She is the Deputy Chairperson of the Financial and Fiscal Commission in the Republic of South Africa. I think if you can just take a bow, Sesmal Jane, so that they can all see you and know you better. You are such an inspiration to young leaders of tomorrow, and those students who are here this morning or today must be inspired that we, amongst us here, do have great South Africans. We also have a Maputi, who's the project leader of this process, working together with Sesmal Jane. She is one of the senior officials in the department in Pretoria, who is in charge of this process. Without her, there's nothing that I can do. She is the one who decides where I must be at what time and when. Do you mind to take a bow as Maputi? She's from Mukopane, if some of you didn't know. So she's home, but responsible for matters of the nation. And so my words of greetings to all of you fellow students of this university, in this faculty that I am so close to. I want to say your presence here is highly appreciated. It's quite an honor for me, but I also see in Dadima Tabata, I almost forgot to acknowledge him. Yeah, he's a very serious character in the political landscape of this country. And I think they will get to know you better as we move on. I want to say, and of course other colleagues who have been introduced from my office who make it possible. Sometimes we overlook our support staff because they are the ones who are driving our programs, our diaries, and confirming that if I'm supposed to be here, they must not clash events, I must be here. So thank you so much for your support, colleagues from the office. Like I said, I feel very much honored to be at home, to be at my university on a different mandate, to come and share a very serious process of redefining the political administrative landscape, if not redefining the system of local government in this country for yet another reasonable policy horizon, probably of not less than 20 to 30 years. The process that I'm going to be taking you through, this policy, which is commonly known as 1998 White Paper process, policy I mean to say, was adopted in 1998. And ever since then to date, this policy was never adjusted. It has had to withstood the test of time for almost 30 years. And generally when we do our own observations, we come to a conclusion that, or a predetermination, that probably most of the problems that municipalities do have could be because this policy has lived beyond a reasonable period. Because since 1994 to date, and I think it's important for our students in the public administration and law to be here. It's important because from 1994 to date, the South African government national development trajectory in terms of the plans and activities had to be adjusted quite frequently. I think colleagues would remember that we had what was called Reconstruction and Development, which was known as RDP, and that document was followed by what was called GIE, which almost made our political landscape very exciting from 1996. It was followed by Asgiza, it was followed by GIPSA, it was followed by Growth Path, and now the National Development Plan. All these macro strategic development plan of the Republic were expected to be implemented through a local government system which was never adjusted. They were adjusted many a times, but this policy had to stand the test of time for almost 30 years. So I'll be taking you through this long presentation, which ordinarily, when we are not under pressure, we take 2 hours to go through it in detail, and we get satisfied that we did not leave anything aside. But because of other circumstances beyond our control, I'll try as much as I could to walk you through this process. And on your screens, I think you do see the presentation outline, which talks to the purpose and the context, why this reform is necessary, and the reform vision. And Professor Sibanda very briefly articulated the vision that actually this policy is grounded on, the reform agenda, and therefore from the reform to implementation, and of course, where are we now, and thereafter, a call to action for all of us in the sector, in the public administration, in universities, and probably in society in general. And therefore, ours is nothing else but we are here to talk to various stakeholders in the country with regard to this process on exactly why are we undertaking this policy process, why this agenda reform is very strategic and very important, and exactly grounded on the vision which was earlier on spoken about, and most importantly to agree that we need a local government system that is fit for purpose, a local government system that will respond through very effective and efficient systems and its administration to address and give South African citizens what they actually deserve in terms of the Constitution. Chapter 2 talks about basic human rights, and amongst those many other rights, there's right for access to water and basic services, rights to motorable roads in our townships and our villages, and comprehensive developmental needs that South Africans actually deserve, as well articulated in Part B of Section 4 and 5 of the Constitution. I'm going to say Schedule 4 and 5 of the Constitution. Those responsibilities accorded to municipalities under those schedules, under Part B, must be implemented without any fail, and therefore they constitute a comprehensive basket of services that South Africans deserve, and this system is expected to live up to its expectations. And to the extent that we have been able to travel this journey from 1995 to date, and I suppose colleagues are quite aware that immediately after the 1994 democratic breakthrough, there was a process which was guided by the interim constitution, which Local Government Transition Act was enacted by Parliament, which guided the formation of local government sphere and transformation of what existed before under urban centers where there were urban-based municipal administrations and peri-urban centers where the R392 townships were form of a municipal administrative headquarters of various areas in the then homelands areas. So that process between 1995 and 2000 was the actual transitional process. And therefore, we all know from that time to date, we had to go through a very serious establishment, transformation, consolidation of this sector. And understandably, in terms of what the South African Constitution gave us as a system of local government, by now, we are supposed to be cruising We are not supposed to be sitting here lamenting the poor performance and challenges that are listed on this screen. That these reforms are very necessary because they cannot be postponed precisely because of the crisis in the systems, management of this sector, that citizens are not very excited anymore in the majority of their own municipal jurisdictions, that there are implementation problems, which is a major issue, not a policy, and not necessarily to a large extent serious resource constraints, but effectiveness, efficiency, and the manner in which services have been delivered. The public trust has to a large extent been impacted negatively by many other factors. Communities are demanding accountability. The focus, therefore, becomes very critical on exactly what should be the outcomes of what these municipalities would have invested. And therefore, a decisive reform program becomes extremely important. These matters that we are putting forward here, ordinarily, they are not supposed to be articulated with that emphasis, because the local government system in this country is totally different from many parts of the continent. In fact, even beyond our continent, many other countries, their systems of local government don't come anywhere closer to the South African local government system. And unfortunately, we are here lamenting these matters, working very hard to try to correct all these issues. It's a very serious matter of concern on our side, but also of an appreciation of the journey we have traveled. The local government report that we have produced, which necessitated this particular policy review, gives us the state of local government. And I assume that all of us are quite familiar that we have got 257 municipalities in the country, which in terms of Section 151 of the country's constitution, they constitute the actual system of this particular sphere. And periodically, in terms of each electoral process, there is always an endeavor to try to deal with the structural arrangements in terms of the form of this particular government. And therefore, this policy process that we are going to be talking about today talks to the democratic substance of this democratic form of local government that we have been able to establish. The form is very clear structurally. We have got all what it takes. But the biggest problem that is confronting us as a country is the democratic substance of this particular system, whether it is able to yield what is so much expected of us. I have said that this policy that we are talking about here was adopted in 1998. And fortunately, at that time, I was a councillor under transitional process in a small area called Nebo North TLC, where I was at that time. I was a deputy chairperson of the transitional council, and I was sitting in the Salga National Executive Committee. So when this policy was adopted at that time, I was still a very young man, but we participated in those processes. So it's quite an exciting period in history that I saw that process when it was adopted, and here we are almost 30 years down the line to review this particular process based on our experiences, our challenges related thereto, and how do we re-occasion this particular system going forward. This slide here, colleagues, just says that we have traveled a very serious journey in the past 2 years after the president in 2022 made it very clear that to the extent that we have moved with regard to local government system in this country, its transformation and consolidation, apparently, therefore, like I said earlier on, that from 1994 to date, this system, this policy was never amended. Yet we have had about 3, 4, 5 policy adjustments with regard to the macro strategic development trajectory of our own republic. So this policy, if it was a human being, I think it would be very tired, because it has had to carry very serious, massive developmental objectives that were imposed on it at the national level over all those periodic strategic policy documents of the Republic. So it has had to carry all those provincial and as well as national development objectives. So in the past 2 years to date, because we are not writing a new policy, we are reviewing that which was adopted in 1998. What we therefore then did was to develop a discussion document based on our experiences out of the reports which were consolidated, research exercises which were undertaken by various South Africans, including all of us in the sector. And that therefore produced a discussion document. And I'm very happy that I'm here back again to bring a report of the work that you also participated. Now, after that policy discussion document was published, we went through a number of engagements with universities, with many social formations in society, including political parties. In fact, we had 2 big meetings with all the political parties in the Republic of South Africa, both big and small, all of them under one roof like this meeting, when we were dealing with this particular process. Now, out of that exercise, we received about 266 submissions from many South Africans, which were consolidated into a synthesis report, and that report is what actually brought us here today, to come and give you an account of where this process is. We're almost about to finalize this process 2 years down the line. It has got to go to the cabinet probably next month. In fact, yesterday, we were in cabinet, a day before yesterday, on Tuesday. We went to a cabinet committee on Tuesday and presented this final report. In principle, they have agreed with us that it must find its way to cabinet next month for final endorsement. Now, this is the work that you have been able to do, colleagues, and we are very much happy that to the extent that we participated, all of us, we are more than very ready to take South Africans in confidence on what constitute the new trajectory that we are basically redetermining on the redefinition of the sphere systems going into the future, so that the problems of municipalities that are characterizing the system, they are actually attended to without any failure. So we're going to be dealing with issues relating to how do we strengthen governance and accountability, matters of finances, professionalization of local government administration, and therefore to what extent do we appreciate the differentiated character and nature of all these various units in their municipal jurisdictions, so that they can be in a better position to respond to the development needs of the South African people. That is broadly my prelude to the process that I'm going to be taking you through in the next coming minutes based on the slides that I'm going to be reflecting. What has South Africa achieved that reform must protect? I have said that the South African local government system is different from many parts of the continent. In fact, and I think without any exception, it's a South African phenomenon where a local government is well codified, not by a ministerial determination. It's codified in the overarching law of the Republic of South Africa. So when we talk of municipalities as entities of this sphere, they are not substructures or subnationals. They are not subcommittees of provinces or of national government. They are spheres of government. And therefore, understandably, a mayor of a municipality, in terms of the constitutional recognition, the design, the architecture of our supreme law of the Republic, they accord those offices a responsibility of them being heads of local state. A municipality is a local state in terms of the architecture of the South African Constitution. So to the extent that they don't do their work, it's a very serious a matter of disappointment, because they derive their existence not because a minister will determine. Chapter 7 of the Constitution talks very broadly about what really constitutes a municipality. So part of this process, we don't endeavor to want to impact or change the constitution precisely because of many other problems. No, we are affirming the status of this municipality. So there's no intention to want to amend the constitution to change its codification in law. So this distinctness of this sphere is still guaranteed. Its democratic accountability becomes very important. The wall-to-wall establishment of these municipalities, we don't have any intention to change that, even if there could be proposals or pressures that somewhere, somehow we may have to readjust those boundaries. No, we are not necessarily interested in that. The authority of these municipalities become very important, and therefore, to the extent that they provide services, in fact, we feel very strongly that we could even expand the extent to which they work and provide services to our people. The demarcations of municipal boundaries and the work of the demarcations board becomes very important, is guaranteed in this process, and therefore, developmental nature of this system is what is uppermost in driving the philosophical vision and the basis of what we seek to achieve at the end of the day, going forward into the future. And therefore, the current system cannot continue to be the way it is at the moment because of serious problems that we are basically experiencing. Citizens are experiencing very serious challenges and problems relating to unreliable provision of services, insecure billing systems, and many other issues that constitute constraints, difficulties, and challenges on how our municipalities are serving the citizens of this country. Like I've earlier on explained, that this system has had to withstand a very serious impact on national and provincial developmental objectives. It is actually strained. And to the extent of its constraints on matters of finances, on matters of the systems and mechanisms, and to the extent that the law would have determined the frameworks, but the systems from funding, planning, implementation, including consolidation of the human resources so much required, it has had its own difficulties and therefore challenges. So the delay in getting this system right, it is very costly. And to the extent that we have not been able to respond to quite a lot of these problems, has had serious negative impact, not only on the state of municipalities, but on the overall governance in the Republic of South Africa. My organization where I'm placed, we used to govern this country by more than 50% of the electoral support in this country. 2024, we got 40%. And that is not necessarily a function of national government alone. It's how citizens are now beginning to respond to the overall government system's performance in dealing with what is their own expectations. So citizens have basically demonstrated what the Constitution says. And I assume that my students here, because they are in the public administration and law, they do have the Constitution of the Republic as part of their Bibles. When they read their Katika sermons from their different churches, they also end every evening by reading the Constitution. Section 1 of that Constitution talks about the belief system of who we are as South Africans. And it says, amongst other issues, we must strive very hard to achieve the following values: human dignity, non-racialism, non-sexism, unity and prosperity. But here citizens perform their task, which says there is no government that shall claim legitimacy unless it is based on the will of the people. So the South African people spoke through that value in the Constitution of the Republic, and they gave us a 40% governance power from my own big church. Now, like I'm saying, this is it's a response by citizens of the system in totality, national, provincial, and as well as local, because Section 40 of the Constitution says these spheres of government, they work together interdependently, and they relate with each other, and they depend on each other, and therefore they constitute a whole. And this whole system has been servicing the citizens of our country, and they have responded to the extent of their dissatisfaction with what we have at the moment. And that's where we are through this particular policy process. We are now zooming into local government as a sphere. Those limitations that needs our attention must be attended to. Why does municipal failure keep reproducing itself? We believe very strongly, my fellow South Africans, that everything stands and falls on leadership. Everything. Where there is no leadership, nothing will ever function. Either in a family, either in a church, either in a traditional setup, either in a school, every social formation, including institutions of society and government, they can only rise based on the character and the quality of its leadership. And within the dialectics, they talk about the proper balance between the will and the ability, the balance between the capacity and the responsibilities given to us. If there is an imbalance between the responsibility and the capacity required to carry that responsibility, that formation or that institution will never survive. Now, that's where we are at the moment. And therefore, we are lamenting that we need to be able to attend to the political problems and governance, and to the extent that there's serious instability in many of our municipalities, it's a function of leadership. And I suppose you, as students of public administration and governance, you should be very interested to want to understand what is the actual definition of the word coalition, and what constitutes coalition government, and what are the characteristics and our experiences on how these governments functions. In many parts of the country, including our metropolitan municipalities, citizens decided that maybe if they can have a mixed bag of political parties to govern their own territories, the situation will be better than when they were governed by a particular party to which I belong. For the past 10 years, can take an example about Johannesburg, where it is at the moment, how coalition politics couldn't work in the interest of the people of Johannesburg. And so is Tshwane, so is Ekurhuleni, so is Nelson Mandela, and many other areas where coalition politics, because these parties go into this space coming from a divergent ideological positions. It becomes very difficult to come together, aggregate their interests in the interest of development. Now, what does it mean? So political system is what we're going to be talking about. How do we think we can regulate an eventuality where we must put coalition parties into governance of a particular municipality? The problem of the politicized administration. Our predecessor, Minister Simelane, tried to want to delineate that there should be categories of officials in the municipality who must not be active in political parties. And therefore, she lost that case in court. But the certain level of administration at the senior management level, the court said these ones can't become senior leaders in political parties. And you know what is the reason about that? This is what the point here says, over-politicized municipal administration in terms of their day-to-day working. You find that a very junior official in the administration is a chairperson of a particular party at a certain level. This councillor, who is an MMC, member of the executive, is very junior in the party, but at work, he is supposed to hold this official accountable and responsible. When things become tough, these councillors get reminded, but ugari walo toma utella wena tla kopana manjiwa ka go hae tla kopana go sko go lekgotleng tla go bitša kgorong. And the poor councillor realizes, no, the power is not here, it's elsewhere. Now, then the system gets impacted differently in terms of the quality of oversight, in terms of the accountability that has to be strengthened and enhanced. All these matters led to a lot of challenges that we are trying to deal with. Problems of financial controls, to the extent that the Auditor General of the Republic of South Africa's audit processes talks about many things, problems of procurement, maintenance problems, water, roads, in many places, it's a bit of a problem. Things are not just quite okay. The trust of the public in our systems has been impacted very seriously. And to that extent, we think very strongly that these matters require serious attention. Just 2 research reports that talks about the public confidence in our public institutions. In fact, yesterday, we just received a report from the IEC by yesterday in one cabinet committee meeting as we are going towards municipal elections. They have conducted a survey, and that survey talks about confidence of citizens in their own government, not only municipalities, national, provincial, and local government. The report is very worrying because out of 14 institutions that they have actually assessed and responded, citizens are saying they actually trust the churches more than their own government. They trust SABC more than their own government. They trust the Defense Force more than their own leaders. They trust traditional leaders who come number 4 than their elected leaders. They trust the IEC, they trust the courts, they trust the unions. Parliament comes number 8. Provincial legislatures come number 9. National government comes number 10 in terms of trust level. Police, that are supposed to be closer to us, they trust soldiers than the police. Soldiers are number 3 in terms of trust. Police, number 11. Local government is number 12. Political parties, 13. Politicians, they are the last. In terms of percentage, politicians have got 9% of the citizens who trust them, only 9%. Political parties is 11, local government is 18, with religious leaders standing at 59% trust confirmation, and our traditional leaders at 41%. Now, no one except us who have got a constitutional responsibility to work and turn around this reality. It's a function of many things that took us where we are at the moment. And myself as a politician, sitting in national government, working with municipalities, when these research reports are released, I can't sleep. I cannot sleep because we have got a mandate bestowed on us by citizens that we must turn around their situations for much better. Human Science Research Council, equally important, conducted another survey, which is called South African Social Attitude Survey, on the trust level of their own government. Almost these reports come closer to each other. Citizens don't trust their government and their political leaders anymore. Now, what must we do going forward? Is what part of this process is beginning to want to respond quite seriously to these matters. The central proposition here, colleagues, is that we've got to make sure that we have capable municipal entities that facilitate success without any failure. Correct failures where they are and strengthen accountability to a large extent. Now, in doing so, from the synthesis report out of the 266 submissions that we received from South Africans, and this is what is a systemic problem, and not necessarily a problem, but in 1998, for instance, because we were still very new in the system, that policy document, if you read, and I want to invite you, my fellow South Africans who are students, you must go and read the 1998 white paper. Because if you want to have a better appreciation of the journey and where we want to go, you must have a comparative analysis of what was there that we were actually reviewing. The 1998 white paper had what we call assumptions, because we were still testing the system. It assumed that certain things will work, and those things didn't work. 30 years down the line, we are responding to those assumptions so that we can address them very seriously. For instance, it believes that, or it believed, it still believes in now, that we must work on an incremental, continuous fixing of issues and not respond policy-wise with strengthened legal framework to deal with those assumptions. And an example about that is that, for instance, small municipalities in the country that do not have revenue base, they are expected in terms of this law, because their functions are the same in the Constitution. They must deliver water, services, roads, and everything else, but they have got a 10 million rands budget for the whole year. By March, 3 months down the line, that budget is finished. They can't do certain things, and therefore the rest of the year, they can't do anything. Citizens are expecting, they have voted, they have elected. It's not their problem. The problem was in the policy. It assumed that because they are still new, we can't just pump a lot of money into that space before we are sure that the system is going to work. The system just actually took everything to be the same. There was no differentiation in terms of support, in terms of injection of resources, and therefore assumed that all these municipalities are going to work at the same level of development based on these assumptions. This system believed that there will be an appreciation by many stakeholders, including even government departments themselves, as they work together. That there will be a collaboration, there will be cooperation, and so forth and so on, without binding framework arrangements, so that if we agree on a particular process, all of us are going to have to work together. This system here that we're trying to address says there is no government that works on air. Every development takes place in a locality, in a ward, in a village, in a township, in an area of a demarcated municipality. But how we have been functioning in the past 30 years, we have not appreciated the centrality that municipalities should become the pivot around which planning, development, implementation, including monitoring and evaluation, has got to take place for proper impact, for proper progress and success. Now, that disconnect was because we assumed that the interconnectedness, as explained in Section 40 of the Constitution and through cooperative governance, these spheres of government will in any way work together and therefore deliver services as expected. And that is not what has happened. And therefore, it necessitates a very serious policy shift, which will result in legislative reinforcement to obligate all these players to impact local spaces in the wards, in the municipalities, in the districts, with very serious development priorities. As we work towards getting this system very right, like I've said, these are matters that we're going to have to work to protect our democracy. Local government, to the extent that citizens are no longer interested in the politics of the country. Okay, let me give you this research report, which will strengthen this point I'm going to say. There's a very serious worry which South Africans must not be very excited about. Because once there is a decline on the electoral democracy and politics of the country, you are basically sliding into a dangerous terrain, where if the entire citizenry cannot be active in politics, and you will have a government that would not have been voted by the majority of the citizens, that government will have a serious problem of legitimacy. And its standing in society might not be very, very authentic and proper. And here is the point. The research report says South Africans, out of the 63 million number, 40 million of them are eligible to participate in the elections, which means they qualify to vote. They are above the age, 40 million of the 63. Now, of these 40 million, if we were to use 2024 national and provincial elections, only 27 million registered. A shortfall of 13 million people who did not register, though they qualify. So 27 registered. Of these 27 million, only 16 million voted. A shortfall again of 11 million in between, which means 16 million South Africans voted against 24 million who did not participate in the electoral politics. Do you see where the problem is? Now, if these 24 inactive South Africans in the electoral politics of their own nation can wake up tomorrow because of their anger, because of their unexplained question that they don't get because they are distant from these processes, waits us ahead of us as a nation? It's something unimaginable. And now, we from this policy process are saying local government must occupy space in the democracy education. It must become part of this policy process because you are closer to the citizens. The citizens know a particular party through the lens of those that they work with at their doorstep, including this government. So you are better placed at that level to deepen democracy education, civic education, and bring back politicization, not along party lines, but raising consciousness on the need for electoral politics, what we call democracy education. It has got to be like that, colleagues and fellow South Africans, because the Constitution itself bestows on citizens a responsibility to participate in the electoral politics of their own country. If they don't participate, they are denying themselves a right based on what Constitution says there shall be adult suffrage, where South Africans, out of a struggle for freedom and democracy, where we lost many people, some of whom can't even get their traces today, just for people to have a right to vote. Now, once you don't exercise that right to vote, you are not punishing anybody. You are punishing your own self because you can't dictate and influence the electoral outcomes of your own republic. So democracy education must be enhanced, and therefore we protect this democracy. It's not in our hands. We are a generation that tomorrow will be transiting to our astral cradles of our ancestral forebears who will not be here. So we can't hand over, bequeath on yourselves as a young generation that is so distanced from what constituted the hardcore of what the nation is all about in terms of the future. So you must be interested in all these matters so that you remain ready to take over the reins tomorrow in the public administration, in the legal sphere, in the politics, and the general management of matters of society. Some of us became leaders because the leadership matters were ignited when we were in schools, at high school, at the higher institute of higher learning. That's where we got sharpened, theoretically, politically, and otherwise. We were still just shooting from the hip. But over time, we were refined by developments and circumstances post-campus-based life. So you must not be interested in these things only when you are on campus. Even when you are outside, you must be able to deal with these issues. So we must deliver services, maintain infrastructure, and of course, uphold the good of governance. So there can't be a good governance if it is not based on electoral politics, because that is the function that produces almost everything, right? What we call the base. The base of democracy is what? It's the system, how it is supposed to be handled. So this process of municipalities, we are therefore now saying we must locate our municipal institutions correctly to deal with these matters of democracy, services, maintain infrastructure, uphold good governance, drive development, respond to community needs, and also prevent institutional collapses. They must be strengthened the way they are supposed to. There are 7 connected package reforms that appears on the screen. I suppose they will show them from time to time. Those points are extremely important. They talk to what exactly do we want to achieve through this process in a very simplified manner, reduced to all these 7 points here that you see. Now, we want to create one local government system. At the moment, we have got a system that is not necessarily synchronized to a larger extent in this way. For instance, here in Limpopo province, I'll give an example because I know them very well. You have a district called Waterberg. Waterberg, in terms of powers and functions, that district does not have powers and functions because it's a district in a region that is predominantly having locals that are towns. So when powers and functions were assigned and allocated, it was only given minimum powers on disaster and something else. It does not have water authority, does not, so many functions it does not perform. But yet when citizens wake up in the morning, they expect that districts to respond to their developmental needs. So that's what we're saying, we want one local government system. So that across the country, if there are minimum functions to be assigned to districts, there must be uniformity. It shouldn't be a prerogative of the provincial leaders who determines based on their own circumstances, a system that is not well regulated at the national level. Differentiated powers and functions is what we must be able to do. We want to professionalize local government. And I'll come back to these points as I explain chapter per chapter in terms of details around these issues. To the extent that we are concluding this process, it has got 78 high-level policy proposals that are contained in that policy document. There are 78 in totality, that which we are going to be taking the system in terms of implementation, repositioning, and moving into the future. So they are spread across all the chapters of the policy document. Yeah, let me just quickly take you through each chapter of this policy process. What does it represent? Very briefly. I might not go into all the bullets one by one, but just to give you a high-level understanding. Chapter 2 talks about the architecture, the design of this system. What actually constitutes, I said earlier on that we have got section 151 of the Constitution. It talks about the sphere of local government. The entities that constitute the system of this sphere are these municipalities. And that is where the architecture, the design, the structural arrangement of our local government system is actually grounded. And therefore, we have in chapter 7 of the Constitution, section 155, talks about those categories, A, B, C, and what, and so forth, and so forth, and so on. And to the extent that some of the major cities in the country, like Polokwane here at home, they have already said, Masemola, we want to become a metro into the future. Right? Now, and it's a very good exercise that they want to undertake towards that recognition. And there are many other such in the country that want to become metropolitan municipalities. But that exercise has got its own pros and cons. It has got its own advantages and disadvantages. You have got metropolitan municipalities that have got a larger part of them being rural areas. Right? So in totality, the character of that metro is not urban. And the understanding was that if we come closer to that, we'll access the resources. And as we access the resources, it means you must take from what is established to those rural areas. And in the course of doing that, because we didn't anticipate certain things, there is a serious infrastructure problems in terms of water maintenance, in terms of roads and other related issues. Water does not actually get supplied properly. A lot of leakages, maintenance, which is a bigger problem. Now, part of this discussion that we are dealing with them here is that in any event where there are provinces that may need to want to have their own metros, let's create another category in terms of design and structures of what could become a category A municipality, which is category A but not a metro. Because metro status has got to do with a lot of issues. In fact, you are likely to lose even some of the revenue streams, including money. MIG, you don't qualify to get it anymore once you become a metro. And if you have villages like you'll need the MIG to be redirected to you. If Polokwane becomes a metro, which is what we want to see, okay, my province wants it and I fully agree, I support them. But in terms of dealing with the national system, we're introducing a category which is called a non-metropolitan category A municipality, which will have the same but with some differentiated understanding in terms of systems, in terms of allocations of what they are supposed to do. District municipalities where you have got a two-tier system, local and district. Mayors of these areas and their colleagues, they have got inherent constraints that sometimes makes them to fight amongst themselves. So when you as academics hear that in that area, colleagues are unable to gel, to work together, don't think it's because of their own making. No, it's a systems problem. And let me give you an example about myself, because I was once a district mayor in 2000 when there was nothing. As a founding mayor, it means I started a municipality that never existed. For 4 weeks, for a month in Groblersdal, I used to drive there in 2000, parking under a tree next to the old Groblersdal municipality and the ShopRite. There was no office because we were just transiting from the previous administration. Those that were responsible there by that time were refusing to give us, just to give me an office to work from. So I had to park under a tree for 4 weeks. So that tree, we called it a tree of remembrance. That's where Skukuni was founded, to establish this institution. Nothing, not even a single official. So establishing a government, I know it better what it means. That's what I was able to do with my colleagues. Now, the inherent issues come here. You have a mayor of a district, you have mayors of local municipalities. We are all mayors, but we have got different roles and responsibilities. You must consolidate collective leadership. And I remember that time there was no framework. Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act was not there. We were just working based on principles of what we were taught through our political classes, that there is a principle called collective leadership. So we use that principle to work together. But these mayors, I remember one of them telling me one day, when I'm Masemola, hey, what's working? You know, look, you are a mayor, I'm a mayor. So there is no mayor who can mayor other mayors continuously. Mayor your own office, man. Go and mayor your own office. Leave me alone. Now, and because of those issues, we could fight. But not of our own making. It's the system itself, the way it is designed, even now, and therefore we are proposing that as we move into the future, we must begin to look at how do we consolidate this two-tier system of government so that we minimize and regulate where possible some of these realities so that we don't find ourselves in this unending, continuous conflicts inherent in the system that impacts on the overall development of their own localities. So that's basically what Chapter 2 is all about. It's about dealing with those matters. Chapter 3 of this document talks to Chapter 3 of the Constitution, Cooperative Governance. It says that you can't work as an entity. You've got to work in a manner that you cooperate. Municipalities, provincial, and national government. So frameworks have been developed. The laws have been passed by Parliament. But the system still flows in different directions, right? And unfortunately, they are all aimed at doing what? Servicing the citizens. So we're beginning to want to get what we call a coordination center through a platform of a district development model so that leadership collectives, both politically and administratively, can find expression in how these systems work. And where things don't work, how do we invoke Section 139 of the Constitution under circumstances that necessitate an intervention? And how continuously do we strengthen application of Section 154 that talks about support to municipalities very seriously? And therefore, the IDPs must be a total reflection of projects from national, provincial, and local in the true sense of the meaning. In the true sense of the meaning. Capricorn must be able to say, when Mayor Mamidu stands up to speak, she must not only speak about what she has, she must have the totality of what government will be doing in her district, from national, provincial, and local. And that is what this system says. We must now pivot the entirety of government at the municipal level. And this will require what? I said earlier on, a function of all these matters is leadership. And I will come to this point to tell you what this policy is now proposing in terms of scaling up the leadership requirements, in terms of scaling up the administrative understanding of what should be a new paradigm shift in terms of the system itself. That is what that chapter says. Chapter 4 talks to the politics, the political system of this government. I said a mayor once appointed is the head of a local state. And municipalities, in terms of character, they are defined as a very complex. It's a very complex space, heterogeneous in character. It's very complex because it has got an interplay of two major things. It has got public functions, services, but it also has got a business sector functions. So it's an interplay of public politics, but also business, because municipality is a business enterprise. You are selling services to citizens in order to get money and reinvest. So it's a business enterprise. So these two things require an extraordinary cadreship, politically and administratively. And quite often than not, we had our own challenges over these past 30 years. And that is the reason why, even where I'm placed in my own church, we are beginning to interview mayors. We are no longer just waking up in the morning and say, "Oh, thou, Dickson, Masemola, you shall go and become a mayor." No. We go through interview process. We were involved now recently. On Saturday, we're going to announce our own mayoral candidates from where I'm sitting in my big church. After elections, where we shall have won elections, we're going to interview. We interview them to take them through these questions. The things I'm talking about here, we ask an individual, what do you know about district development model? If you appointed a mayor, how are you going to go about to make sure that the institutional design and the system of this government gives us what we want? You can't use common sense. You must now tell us that the Constitution says, Part B of Schedule 4 and 5 gives us functions. This is how I'm going to go about strengthening the system this side, delivering this side, providing leadership. So you need a particular caliber of cadreship. And that is why now the standards are upped, that minimum must be a metric going forward. But for you to become a mayor, you must have post-metric qualification, diploma and above, unless under extreme circumstances, which we said it's an exception. I remember, as we were dealing with these matters, many of our colleagues, we had to send them back because we said, no, from these interviewees, we don't see any candidate suitable for a mayor. Can you give us another list? Now, this is what is now beginning to shift. We wanted to put a qualification in the law, but it couldn't work in the law because Section 158 of the country's constitution provides some limitation. It says anybody, as long as you don't have criminal records and everything else, you are a citizen, you are what, you can vote, you can still be voted. But now the political parties are now enjoined by these realities that they must begin to look differently amongst themselves when they actually identify who must go into council as councillors, and therefore finally those who will constitute the leadership. Because if you allow unqualified to go in when the requirement for a mayor is a post-matric qualification, so you'll go there, you will not be able to have a mayor. Because you will be forced to take someone out to bring someone with those qualifications. Why? Because municipalities are very complex. You must understand provincial government, you must understand national government, you must understand the environment, you must understand your own environment as a so you must read. You need someone who has got the capacity to voraciously read, internalize and understand and apply these things. So without minimum qualifications, you cannot be empowered to do exactly that. That is what we are beginning to want to do to strengthen the politics of our municipal administration, so that tomorrow, when investors come to a space, they can find a man or a woman standing who can engage, who will drive a vision of that particular area unambiguously without being told. Secondly, it's about chapter 5 on the administration. And I think I tried to explain just briefly what these political systems mean. It's about strengthening these systems for accountability, for oversight, for better leadership, better coordination, because we're bringing a new concept of what we call a community of a municipality. And that community of a municipality must be well understood by the leader, being a mayor together with his or her team. Understanding, and I'm going to come to that point where communities are now being accorded a very important space in the municipal systems and governance. Chapter 5 on administration, my fellow South Africans, talks about the experience that we have, okay? We have got, okay, we come a long way. We come a long way. There are a lot of things that happened which should not have happened administratively. So we're beginning to say we must now lift the standards of recruitment, of selection and appointment and placement. That must not be based on a principle of political suitability. Appointments must be based on merits, capacity, knowledge, experience, and qualifications. So that's what we're starting to do, very seriously. We're trying to create an understanding that says, and you are students of our public administration. Chapter 10 of the country's constitution and section 195 in particular talks about values and principles of public service and administration. And to the extent that they must be lived, they require a particular cadreship of administrators who are grounded in the real stuff of administration for public service. Now, an assumption which was made in 1998, which crippled municipal administration, is this. We have got what we call Public Service Commission, which sets standards for public administration in the Republic in totality, provincial and national. For the past 30 years, municipal administration was not part of that system. It was a standalone. So there were no proper systems to do what? To set system standards, to ensure compliance and many other issues administratively. So municipalities could just wake up in the morning and therefore determine what they want to do, advertise, appoint, not based on many other necessities that are supposed to be observed. So 30 years down the line, we said, no, this system can't float on its own because the Constitution says there is only one public service for the Republic of South Africa, which must set standards in the applicability of all these public administrative laws, including implementation of Section 195. So municipal administration must be part of that. In the past few months, a Public Service Commission Amendment Act was passed by Parliament. After the 4th of November, the totality of administration in the Republic is going to be now overseen by the Public Service Commission, which means a lot of things are going to have to be done at the municipal level to up the standards, to reorientate, reposition them for better administrative functioning. That's one part. But at the center of that, the President passed what is called a Professionalization Act in the past few months for provinces and national, which says, okay, before there was an assumption that if I'm an MEC, as an executive authority, I've got all the powers to decide whether I can delegate some administrative functions to the head of department, or if I'm a minister, I can delegate certain functions to the Director General. Quite often than not, in most instances, not most, in some, let me qualify it, in some, because it was not a national crisis. It was isolated cases. Some of us would wake up in the morning and withdraw all the functions administratively, meaning even to give a leave to a very junior official down there, and then they become executive functions. That system can't work, or it couldn't work. It's going to freeze. So the president decided to delink and said, we must accord the heads of administrations real powers and functions that are administrative. We in the politics must focus on our space. So there is now a very clear delineation of responsibilities, provincially and nationally. We are bringing the same principle here in this law. in this policy that says a municipal manager must now begin to assume very serious responsibilities. And that person, when you appoint an MM, it must be based on professional standards, and therefore not only the councillors will walk that journey of appointing a municipal manager in the next round of elections. We are going to have to put systems in place of professionals who will constitute panels and say, this one qualifies, this one doesn't qualify. There will be no political suitability. It will be based on the capacity of South Africans who would have taken pain to prepare themselves to become better officials. And we're also working on increasing the term of office of these offices. In fact, Cabinet nationally decided to increase the term of office for Directors General to 10 years going forward. We are also bringing this principle here that a municipal manager must be in office for a period of not less than 10 years, minimum 10 years. Because why? You have an MM for 5 years, his or the officials below him are permanent. That person gets into a space, it takes 2 years to learn that institution. You have got 2 years to implement it. The last year is looking for employment elsewhere. So there will never be stability and focus. So we are basically creating certainty that you as our students, if you want to become senior officials tomorrow, you know that from the word go, it's not suitability of the politics that will determine whether you can be employed or what. It should be the capacity, the knowledge, the experience that you basically are able to demonstrate through that process of selection, recruitment, and finally placement. That is what we are bringing into the equation. High level of what we call professionalization of municipal administration. There are a lot of things that already have been done, from regulation to standards and other related activities that we are undertaking in this area of work. Chapter 8 talks about municipal finances, and this is at the center of everything else. You can put a good system, as long as there's no money, that system, citizens won't feel it. At Fagimali, Zobon. Now, Ceci Malijing, she has a very difficult task in the Finance and Fiscal Commission, because they are the ones who must set up policy parameters from a fiscal point of view. Policy parameters. Now, for this municipal space, Mgoni, there are two sections in the Constitution that are very central to this discussion. Section 214 on the distribution of the equitable share collected nationally. The 1998 white paper made an assumption, and it's a serious matter of discussions. It made an assumption that municipalities must fund 90% of their own operational costs. 90% of their operational costs. They must find money. And get money through what? They've got revenue streams in terms of fiscal policy and functions. Trade services, water, electricity, sewer, and other related businesses, and then you get money, you reinvest and roll out your own plans. The assumption it made was that, what about your rural municipalities and your small municipalities, where there's no revenue base? So they get only 10% themselves, because the 90%, they don't have it. Then this 10% become 10 and 90. They must use the 10% to fund everything operationally and still carry their own costs. And no wonder why, to a large extent, we have got some difficulties here. So first thing first is to say, how do we redefine a principle of equitable distribution of nationally collected revenue amongst these spheres of government, including Mgoni Khoshiaka, funding of traditional leaders. And I will come back to this point because tonight's meeting, why I must go back to Pretoria in preparation for tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a special min-make, 6 o'clock in the evening. So we'll finish at 11, 12 on a Friday. Because there is an outstanding chapter here, I'm going to come to chapter 7, which it needs sober minds on how do we deal with it. So, but in terms of these finance matters, we're working on reviewing the funding model of municipalities, but equally important, we're looking at how do we ensure efficiency Municipalities must use their resources efficiently, economically, and make sure that there is no wastage, corruption, malfeasance, and malversation, and other related things that are not needed are kept. Those are the things that we are basically dealing with. And part of the reason why we want to up the conduct of our own administrators and councillors. In fact, yesterday in that meeting where we're discussing some of this reform process, we're saying there is what in the national and provincial government called the Executive Members Ethics Act that regulates what we must do and not what we must not do. If I do stupid things with financial interests and I don't comply with the act, there are serious penalties that will be imposed on us as members of the executive. But the same thing does not apply in municipalities. So we're beginning to say to enforce accountability and raise the standards of ethics, we must work towards getting Municipal Ethics Act in place that will obligate councillors together with the officials to behave differently in their relationship with the resources of their own spaces. Because the problem is the relationship with the resource base that we're in charge of. And that's what becomes a bigger problem. So we must define the relations better and the conduct on our side. So that it's not spoken, it is in the law. You know, if I do this, this shall happen to me. And therefore, that regulation will help us going forward. So we're dealing with these matters of finances. Ceci Malijing as a deputy chairperson of the FFC, they will work on these matters very seriously. In the department, she is leading a stream that works on reform of municipal funding going into the future. We're looking forward to that debate. What our traditional leaders are demanding equally in the same space is that as you reform to fund municipalities much better, we must also be accommodated in that reform process to fund our traditional councils' functionality so that we are able to intensify our work in shaping our instruments of indigenous governance of our own spaces. So we're dealing with that. Chapter 9 is about service, no, chapter 7, where is it? Hey, I almost skipped it. Chapter 7, yeah, I skipped it, I'm very sorry. I skipped 6 and 7. I think I was trying to move fast. Chapter 6 in short, before I get to the traditional leaders. In the 1998 white paper, this chapter does not exist, on the role of citizens. We're elevating the citizens in the municipal government to be at the same level with their elected politicians, the administrators, to define the three-legged character of a municipality, that it must be fully understood to be comprised of politicians, officials, and the community. So we're bringing a concept there that is called relational governance. So relations must be a government standalone activity by these leaders together with their officials. So that you as a citizen, you don't have to be begging a municipality. They will not be doing a favor to you. They must understand that there are certain things they are not going to do without you as a citizen. So this chapter talks in detail about how do we lift citizens to become real players in the whole equation. Chapter 7, that's where the traditional institutions are. Our traditional leaders are saying, for the past almost 30 years of municipal space, we have not been very instrumental in the actual governance and management of this system. They demand a meaningful role in the affairs of municipalities. And one thing that I really want to appreciate, Mgoni, was when the debate started, there was a demand for a fourth sphere of government on traditional leaders. And through persuasion, they accepted, no, it cannot be a sphere, but they are organs of state. So let us not create another sphere, there will be too much complications. But understandably, traditional institutions, they are organs of state, and therefore the state has got an obligation to look after its organ of state. And then how and to what extent. Part of the debate now is that there are two things that we must clarify. The first one is that there is a demand to amend Chapter 12 of the Constitution and elaborate the functions of traditional leaders in the main law of the Republic. It's not something we can do now because it's not part of us as CoGTA per se. It requires government in total, justice leading it, because it's a custodian of the Constitution and the presidency. Now, that demand stands from our royal leaders. We pleaded with them to say, if you put this demand through this policy process, we might not be able to respond, otherwise we will pull back and leave things as they are. Until that time, we don't know when. But we have an opportunity through this policy review of CoGTA to agree on minimum route that we must undertake together, where meaningfully we can bring some package of administrative functions that can be added as part and parcel, including increasing your participation in the municipal councils, including their affairs, so that the funding as it gets determined, because funding follows function, that is a principle in government. Funding follows functions. So we give you minimum functions for now, which we must work together with municipalities, so that when we discuss the review of the funding model, it also covers the extent to which it could. And then we are able to walk this journey in the immediate towards the long-term solution of these matters. But finally, we therefore then said, we need to have a compact that must elaborate those key things, which must be between us and traditional leaders in terms of creating that meaningful role and space for them in the affairs of the municipal life. So that's where we are, Khoshiaka. Tonight, we have a proposal, we're going to debate it, and tomorrow we're going to MINMEC to present it, and hear whether our colleagues in MINMEC, including the National House, we're inviting tomorrow National House, including chairs and deputy chairs of provincial houses, so that when we rise and go to cabinet with this document, it has got all the aspects that are very important for its implementation. I think I've already spoken about these matters. The last one is just about how do we ensure spatial justice? And this is part of the working issues between municipalities together with their traditional leaders. Land use management plan, settlements of our people, because many of them to date, they are settled in wrong places, floodline areas, and they are forever victims of disasters and many other things. So we're starting to work on these matters and say, through the IDP process, LED plans, and those various sectoral plans of the municipalities, we must ensure proper economic development, including activities and projects that must find expression on the ground. Just to give one example, for instance, the president has announced that there is a R1 trillion budget in the next coming 3 years, right? This budget, it's been put into the public space of government because we want to address the problems that impact on our economy, and to the extent that we are unable to get the economy growing at the rate that is so much required to create jobs, opportunities for our people. The fact that many young people are not working, that gives us sleepless nights. And that R1 trillion is categorized in many ways to zoom into those spaces where we think it will basically bring some form of injection into the resources required over a particular period of time, so that we can shock the economy a little bit as we try many other aspects and many other activities, so that comprehensively we can be able to respond to the macro strategic demands of how this economy is supposed to be re-engineered and reignited to become much better going forward as we deal with other factors of national and international complications. Having said that, I think I'm now at the end of the presentation. I'm now at the end, and then from here, where to? Because we're transiting from an old policy to a new policy. There might be a challenge of a systemic, sustained implementation, including the risk that in the next elections, we might get many new councillors who, in one way or the other, were never interested in what was happening, and they will have a cohort of thousands of them who still have to be workshopped to understand this policy on how it must be implemented, and which already is like that. Many of them, they are likely to, because it's a function of political systems of their own parties. So we're putting in place what we call a program director a transitional plan. A transitional plan that says what must be done, when and how, by who. And therefore, and who is supposed to manage this process. We're putting in place what we call a transition management body of individuals who will be looking all over the country based on the criteria to be set and get as many South Africans with the appropriate knowledge, skills, and understanding in these spaces so that they can come closer to us. But they will be driven at the political level by CoGTA, National Treasury, and as well as the presidency for joint management of all these processes. This slide just shows you the journey we have traveled from 2024 to date, that it was a very long journey of public discussion, of public engagement, of public consultation, of soliciting views and expectations, including the demands that we have had. Demands of citizens, including demands of political parties in those meetings that we have had. So by the end of this month, as I said yesterday, on Tuesday, we went to a cabinet committee. We are on our way to cabinet for endorsement of this policy because we can't fail to deliver it before the 4th. The new administration of municipalities must be governed under a reviewed white paper policy because it will actually create a platform for better things to come moving into the future so that we close the old chapter and respond very seriously. And that is why some of us in local government, when you are called for a TV interview or a radio, it's very difficult. It's not an easy space to be confronted in those media engagement because people are no longer interested in listening to rhetoric. However, thou as it be, if that was not the cause of events, be that is made this way. No, they are not interested. They say, Masemola, from where you are, these are the real issues. What are you promising citizens? And we are saying to South African citizens, we have got our own analysis of the good things that we have done. Inherent in that, there are problems. And these problems, we are not lamenting them. This policy process is a response to some of those matters. Just to give you, as I stepped out, one simple mechanism of how we want to address some of these problems. In Gauteng, for instance, in Johannesburg, and the metros there, the president came up with what we call a presidential working group. It was when Durban, eThekwini, people could not even go to the beaches. If you remember at some point, beaches were closed because there was a total mess. Now, we had to invoke a particular process through His Excellency. And today, Durban is the best city in the Republic of South Africa. It has even outsmarted Cape Town in terms of the recent report on employment statistics. It's the best run city today with many billions of investments moving into our space. So we are resolving those structural, systemic, administrative, and political problems. We just took one mayor there, a senior leader, with the whole team that he found there, but the system changed. Because what matters most, my fellow colleagues, what matters is leadership. Once we have got the right minds, right people with the wherewithal required, nothing is impossible. So that situation is right. Now we are in Johannesburg with that team. We're pushing into what is called Operation Vulindlela, review of the metro trading services. Because the Johannesburg water problem, you know what is the problem there? Is that for the past 30 years, okay, maintenance was not done properly. So when they buy water from rainwater, and that's why they've got what we call non-revenue water. So a lot of water gets wasted, disappears in the system. And therefore, when they're supposed to pay rainwater for the bulk water that they buy, they don't have the returns because they charge from very little water that remains in the system. Here they spend, say, R1 billion to buy that water, but you get only 500 million. So there's 500 million loss. That 500 million, you must still use it to do what? To cross-subsidize the activities of the municipality. Into the maintenance, only 10 million goes there. This infrastructure age, and at some point, it collapses. You will never be able to service your own people. So we're working into the real maintenance program of those services infrastructure so that we can ring fence. So we've got a policy systems response when we respond to South African citizens when they raise concerns that in Johannesburg, in Ekurhuleni, in Tshwane, and elsewhere, what is your plan? You see, Polokwane now, there's major revamping of infrastructure that is taking place. The previous administration dealt with pipes of water in Polokwane in the main. The problem was the source, not the infrastructure. Now they are dealing with roads. That's what we are basically beginning to look at, proper maintenance of our infrastructure to ease conditions of our own people. So we're calling to you as South Africans, especially universities, that we are here to give you your report. This is your report, University of Limpopo, of the work that you have done. Its implementation is not our sole responsibility. How do you think we can best implement this policy? So, two things that we are expecting you to do. We are expecting you to take this policy document and customize it into your curriculum. You will definitely unavoidably have to have an improved version of what goes into your curriculum so that our students must not catch up when they have long passed, whereas we are no longer basically talking about these issues. So the sooner our universities are able to adjust their curriculum much better, quicker, so that what is contained here, it becomes current in your classrooms. That is one thing. Related to it, you must also tailor-make short courses for the incoming cohort of counselors, including even the administration, so that we don't microwave, but we sharpen their skills and understanding so that they learn on site, because we don't have time for them to come and spend 2 years here in a classroom. They must come here in the evening. They must get proper tools of sharpening so that when they go back to work tomorrow, they do what is expected. These ones, when they pass the university, they are current in terms of what this country is actually expecting and what we as CoGTA, working through Office of His Excellency, want to reimagine the future local government of the Republic of South Africa. Ya kabripana ki seke sitlišitšego mo go tlo hlaba tloka diloka ka sepedi ba re se ke ka tatapolola tšee mako go sele ka sohlantila mokgoba ka binabina felo go tee aowa le tšetše kgomo mokokotlo pele re gakanega re kgone go boela gae ke tšhaba gore ba re pele mehlobo mengwe e bina ka re ke tlabe ke jule tseleng ke sabe an African pele ga ge re swara ke tlala pele ga mehlobo ka moka re bina e se go mongwe ka moka re bina thobela.
Choir, please get ready as and when you will be taking the DM of the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not easy to become a program manager where a politician is a guest. However, today you can feel that we are not addressed by a politician, but by an esteemed scholar, person who is flat-footed, who is knowledgeable, who knows what he's talking about. DM, in your hand, I think the department is in good hands. Indeed, Mampile, we need to go to our Form 6 colleagues and re-engineer. And then we must make maybe a pledge, maybe to sign a memorandum of cooperation with the department while the DM is still there, and take advantage of such. DM, I have a question, but you need not to answer it, my honorable DM. In the category or hierarchy of trust, I've got a daughter who is a traffic officer, and I teach transport management in this institution. I want to check, and when I go home, I will check even myself. In which category, what level is she in terms of trust? Choir, are you ready? Thank you. ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause. Indeed, indeed, indeed. I'm tempted. I heard the DM speaking about the church. DM, when you leave here, can you kindly give me membership? I need to join the church. I hear the song there. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting time, I'm pressured to call to the stage our panel facilitator, Professor M.M. Mashamaite. And ma'am, allow me, I know you are my friend. I will only give you 15 minutes between yourself and your fellow panelists. With due respect, ladies and gentlemen, my extinguished guests that are sitting on the stage, I will want to release you except the DM and Mungwammu to remain seated while they are joined on the stage by a well-known, profound brother of mine from another mother, Professor Ngamulankuna, to be part as a surprise. Definitely he's a thinking tank, we know. DM will tell you more about how he assisted in the DPSA while he was an advisor to the then minister. Ladies and gentlemen, Prof, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jabs. Mfana ko Pitori. Ke a o leboga. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good day to everyone. Protocol observed, but let me take this opportunity and greet our distinguished guests. Ke dumedishe Deputy Minister, Dr. Masemola. Ke dumedishe Bemmabu, Khoshi Dikhale. Ke dumedishe Professor Mtsonga, Professor Nkuna, and that will be our panelist for this afternoon. And I will try push it fast because we have learned that our DM needs to be out of the province in the next few minutes. So, and Tata Masemola, ke rata go leboga speech Salina. You have indeed reflected on issues of relevance regarding the future of developmental local government, particularly the introduction of the reforms, and you have also provided a rich history on governance and municipalities. So I would now like to bring our panelists into the conversation, and our intention is to move from the broader policy implementation and get to the realization of the implementation beyond just the wording of policy. Now, what we want to ask is, what will these reforms mean in practice for municipalities, for provincial governments, for academia, as well as traditional leaders, most importantly, for our people? So the question that I would like to open the floor for all of you as my panelists is, given what these reforms have presented, the vision of the developmental local government, from where you are sitting in your offices, what is that one most important thing that you think needs to happen in order for these visions to make a real difference in ordinary people's lives? Ke kgopela go thoma ka lena Ngaka Masemola.
Oh, I thought I'm still.
Lesa kucha. Okay. Re kgopele Bemmabu ba re bulele yona.
Okay, moya ganyane.
All right.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. To us, it's a great honor that we've been invited here. I'm saying we, because a traditional leader will never be alone at all times. You will be with the community and the other people. Support from the communities. And I'm so happy that the research said we are at level 4 when it comes to trust with communities. Level 4. Well, Tau,
Masemola.
Tau, worry, you are number last. We are at level 4. But let me base my greetings on what the other speakers have said. They've laid a very good list of people who are here participating in this program. I think it's important that there should be development in the rural areas. If you don't develop the rural areas, I'm quite sure that we are doomed to fail. Our province is 87% rural. Limpopo is 87% rural. And those people are under the rule of traditional leaders. Just around here. So if we don't develop those areas, we are definitely going to fail. As one person said, running away from your problems will never make you win the race. So the problems that we are having in the rural areas, infrastructure, will definitely make us fail. So it's better that we create strategic villages that will be good and will serve the people of these rural areas. Let me give you an example. Mamadi Mpaka here. Mamadi Mpaka here. Part of it is ruled by us. We had about 160 sites there that we gave to people without infrastructure. You can think we're not infrastructure. They've got problems. You see them in floodwaters. That main stream there that is taking water to Nandoni Dam is giving them a problem. And this is because the rural areas were not developed. We still have a pattern of developing only the urban area. But I think we still have a role as traditional leaders to play. In the year 2000, 2002, I was a student of this university, doing Masters of Development at Edu Park. I chose a topic, the role that traditional leaders can play in the new dispensation. I wrote something and came here to my professor, who was my promoter. She was in the office there, gave her my paper. She looked at it, she read, she looked at me. She said, Dikhale, do you think traditional leaders still have a role to play in this era? I was frustrated, looked at her. She said to me, most of the problems that we are having in this province have been caused by traditional leaders. They sold people as slaves. They did this, they did this. They took water from the rivers, what. They took land and that belongs to the communities. That is what she told me. She gave me the paper and said, no, go and read something else. That's what she told me. But you listen to what Namane, Masemola, Trahu was saying, that the traditional leaders are there to play a role. And those people who are staying with us in the rural areas still depend on us. Sometimes they come to the office, or even the royal house. No, I want you to give me an advice. We say, no, but this doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the social worker. He says, no. I can't go to that one. I still have trust in you. Your father saved me. You must also save me. See? So but I think if we can make sure that we address some of these problems of the rural areas, we can go very far. And that will make people no longer to go to the urban areas, even if it can be a very small number. But some of them will never go to the urban areas, will stay in the rural areas, not neglect their rural villages. And then we can go further.
I think, in short, Khoshi was saying, let's acknowledge the traditional leaders and also provide services, not only on paper. Let's not have their names in our policies, but not act on our promises. Diakwala ba ka mafateng a matelele. Dr. re kgopela le ena. Prof, yes.
I decided to go first before the DM for obvious reasons. I want him to take something. This process come at the time where we really need it. And I'll take from the context of scholarly, philosophically, and developmental, yet that's why we call it developmental local government. Remember, as a state, we'll say we're aspiring to be a developmental state. And what we are seeing now is rolling it to the correct level where we need to have a fully fledged, even in a local level, to being developmental. Looking at what have been presented, the question was raised, although it was not that direct, that what is going to happen in terms of the curriculum which we are offering in terms of local government, public administration, and administration in general. And you see the coming of this policy document is reflecting and also challenging that what we are offering now, does it talk to the realities, what is happening, what they found when they are preparing this document? Of course, yes, when we started with the first white paper of 1998, everything was an assumption to an extent that there were some few misfit with the reality on the ground. And those misfits are being addressed now that were becoming developmental. To an extent that I was impressed, DM, when I was reading the hard copy version, that somewhere you also reflect on the issue of the framework being adopted, a system theoretical framework. And that tells you that there's a need also for universities also to come in and also join in reshaping the curriculum which will address these issues. But the other issue, is this vision going to work? Yes, it will work, or else no, it is not going to work. Why one is saying that? In that, in addressing the reality, how do you merge the theories which the university will provide in trying to interpret what this white paper is providing, and how is that going to address the reality on the ground? Because in most cases, what you have said in your presentation, that sharpening the people who are going to deal with this start here in the university. And are we ready here, as if I see my students here, are we ready to go there and make a difference? And that difference, we can do that by participating. As this white paper also has a space where it indicates that they need to increase and stimulate the participating through either as a citizen, as a scholar, as a whatever best knowledge and information you can bring to make it realizable. And that's the issue which I said, it is going to be feasible, it is going to be workable, looking at that. But be that as it may, I'm saying that things appear to work out. Thence I'm saying that involvement is very critical, to an extent that the students, or else the universities, or else the other role players need to come on board to make sure that this white paper realizes. For example, I'm impressed that the traditional leaders now are looking at, seeing at their role, their space, because the initial white paper omitted them. And when you check our country landscape, the bigger part of our country is traditionally managed. And now, given this coming white paper which is being proclaimed now, they are going to be on board to an extent. I hope they are not going to gallop faster than the IDPs, because I see development is coming from the traditional leaders much faster than what is in the IDP. But be that as may, it was because even the planning or the issues which was addressed by the previous white paper, they were not consolidated to an extent that we need one consolidated system of public administration which will be able to roll with them. So to that extent, I'm saying that the issue or the picture is becoming clearer. With this white paper, we are going somewhere in terms of development state. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Prof. I'm glad you did heed Dr. Masemola's advice that we need to reshape our curriculum, and he made a commitment. I hope Professor Sibanda had you committing to that, and come performance evaluation, he will look into the matter. Dr. Masemola, can we have your piece on it? Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you once more, facilitator of this important session. There are a few points which I think, for me, they are very much central to the ability of government to realize the set objectives contained in this and policy proposals in this document. We can have the best of the systems across the world, comparatively speaking, but it will remain a dream deferred if it cannot be implemented. And implementation talks to the capacity of the administration, including the politics, how they are supposed to be positioned to appreciate what South Africans deserve, and beyond their party political understanding, stand very outstandingly to serve the people of this country, including these officials, who must equally important appreciate the fact that it's an opportunity to be appointed in the administrative post, primarily so is to serve the people of this country. So we need a highly conscious political and administrative components that must deal with these issues. 2 points for me related to that is that there is what it is characterized, and those who are doing politics, I suppose, in this hall, as our students will agree with me, that there is always a dialectical relationship between the ability and the will. I could say if we are going to have people in offices who have the will and not the ability, this policy will become a dream deferred. Because having a will is something else, and the ability is the capacity so much required to translate that what has been given to you into reality. So it all centers around the capacity of the individuals who are supposed to be given responsibility. That's the first point. The second scenario related to that is that if, okay, and this one I read it from a book written by John Maxwell on the high road leadership. He says there must be a balance between, so he draws 3 comparisons in that writing about the responsibility and the capacity. So he says if the responsibility it's bigger than the capacity, that institution will never move, which means we have a wrong person in a particular responsibility. So the responsibility is much bigger than this individual. You appoint Masemola as a director. The responsibilities that goes with the directorship, this incumbent cannot even come closer. But because he needs money or she needs money, he will just try his level best, glued to his computer in meetings. You will think he's doing something better. Candidate, there is absolutely nothing that is happening. So there should be a better balance where the capacity is much bigger than the responsibility. And that is what I suppose in the public administration is a big issue. And as to answer you directly, what should happen to get this thing implemented is to have the right people in the right positions with the right capacity required politically and administratively to do their work. Without that, this policy, and that is why, related to that, we are now putting a program on professionalization. And clearly so we say, if you are to professionalize local government, it means firstly you must conscientize those that are there at the moment. And how do you conscientize them? You must put regulations and frameworks that begins to challenge them to understand that if they don't do certain things within a particular period of time to get their skills, upgraded, they run a risk because performance assessment and including setting standards through, because what we're suggesting is that I didn't talk about everything in here. We are suggesting in the main document, facilitator, that we must put a council of municipal professions, which at the moment is not there. It's only those who are in finance, where they belong somewhere. Those who are in engineering, they belong somewhere. And the rest of the entire administrative population is floating in between without set standards and values of what is expected of a public official. So we want to put a council that must come and zoom into general space where our officials are placed so that we can put standards, including obligations being put on them, so that they know the do's and the don'ts and what is expected of them. It's not only for municipal officials. As I say, now that Public Service Commission is coming closer to us, in fact, we already had a discussion as CoGTA with the chairperson and all commissioners in the provinces. So we're beginning to work on a model on how do we systematically, in an incremental way, but a bit faster, bring professionalization into the space so that if you are in community services in a municipality, you are in the administration, what does it mean to provide a better administrative services? So digital governance must actually kick in. You can't have an official who cannot even operate simple things, a computer. And you still do have them, who are very unfriendly with the gadgets. They just want to operate manually, and yet we want to move from common sense and go towards digital governance. And finally, the ability of these officials to translate this document into something else. We appreciate the essence of data. So we've established the CoGTA, and I think we have launched it. We've invited officials. We're discussing in the last ministerial meeting that we need to get feedback. We're going to have to test how municipalities are using that strategic hub, which is a repository of data which is required for decision making, both politically and administratively, because it can tell you that so and so went into the hub, tapped information, so and so went into the hub, tapped information in this area and that area. So we said they must go and generate a report, which you must then come and assess and say, of all our 257 municipalities, how many of our officials from which municipalities would have gone into the hub to basically require information. So if we can't appreciate and teach our officials the importance of data, the importance of information, the importance of skills, and therefore consciousness, and that is what I think in the public administration is really lacking, big time, because the job is guaranteed. The job is guaranteed. There are no targets. If you don't meet them, you can still have an excuse and life goes on. You understand? Because after 5 years, for Masemola, they are gone. New politicians come, they start afresh. By the time they understand who's managing, it's 3 years down the line, and then 4 years is out, and then, so the system goes on, and the man goes on pension without having made any major contribution in the lives of the people. So this professionalization aspect, with its key milestones, including pointers, it will only happen equally if those that are in the management level will have the ability to implement. So it's a whole a paradigm shift. That is what is required. We're going to talk a lot, but if we can't shift this system in a major way, this good plan, grand plan, will become a dream deferred for our children in future, grandchildren, to say, but our grandfathers once wrote this thing, why this country is still where it is at the moment. South Africa stands on a very good opportunity. In fact, I was in Kenya some few months back in one platform where we were exchanging policy issues. Kenyans said to me, do you know that local government policies, not only local government, but the rest of their government systems, they just take our policies and change from RSA to Kenya, from department into their own departments, and they go and actually add. So they customize our policies. And Kenya has moved. By the way, if you compare us with Kenya, in terms of policy implementation, they are far advanced because they appreciate what we have, and we don't appreciate what we have. We are involved in something else, in a vicious circle that does not necessarily give citizens. And money is not a big problem in South Africa. I can tell you. Let me give you just a simple example. In CoGTA, where I am, I got to know when we went to a budget process, because we go and argue in Parliament. please adopt our budget, blah, blah, blah. You know, through us, through our DG, he disperses 140 billion rands every year to municipalities. CoGTA alone, not just, this is what constitutes an equitable share and some grants. So you still have got water and sanitation, and so money is 140 billion rands. And when we follow it, you must go into a municipality and say, let's see your IDP projects approved by MIG. This is what, and these are approved by us. So we follow them to want to understand where is the money, for what purpose, can I come and be part of cutting the ribbon? And in many ways than not, we find talking past each other. So money is a constraint, but money is not a problem in South Africa. In fact, if those monies were used properly, this country will be far advanced, more than where things are at the moment. But we cannot throw our hands in air. We still have, that's why we're tightening our screws. As I conclude, from this policy, for instance, we have asked the officials in the office to do a very thorough exercise. So they went into a plan the last week. They came back. The analysis says if we want to tighten the screws, including money leakage, they are proposing about 89 legislative amendments in various pieces of the law to tighten the system. And let me tell you why this is important. I went to one province doing an accountability exercise, and the mayor says to me, hey, Masemola, you know my municipality is a crime scene. He accepted in a big meeting like this. My municipality is a crime scene. I said, why? Then I must bring the police. Let me talk to my DM, my former premier, Matali, and they must bring the police. I said, yeah, they must come. This is a crime scene. What is the problem? No, you see, the problem is that the municipal manager woke up in the morning, appointed 22 contractors worth 300 million rands without any due process on a system that does not even have that money. So these contractors must be paid. Citizens expect services, there's no money. Two things. The council, the municipality will collapse financially because that money is not there. Citizens won't get these services. They'll be very angry with the government because they know that a particular project is coming. How do you stop something like this? It's not the word of mouth. We go into Municipal Finance Management Act. We put a clause that must basically make it illegal certain administrative actions, so that once they happen, these officials must know they don't have to come and explain to themselves, to us. They must just go straight to police station. As simple as that, so that you can then begin to save and ring fence and protect the resources of the people. So it means the legal instrument must be very tight and not even allow a room for certain things, including utilization of technology and IT. You understand? For instance, there's a proposal in the supply chain processes that for you to run a tender system, you must begin to use technology to run some of these things. You don't have to go through a manual system anymore. You've got to find creative ways to minimize certain things, but at the center is the strictness of the law. The law must bite. It must make it impossible. So we must instill fear, a constructive fear, not fear to develop, constructive fear to allow things to flow better. And that's where we are at the moment, and we think through this process in the next coming 5 years, South African local government administration should be different from how it has been in the past. And that's where we are as CoGTA now. But before I close, I want to just appreciate Professor Slab here. You know, this man was my supervisor, who I am because of him. And I talk about you wherever I go. That, you know, my supervisor is in TEF, Professor Slab. So I didn't know that I will see you today here. I'm so humbled. Yeah, I'm good.
Thank you very much, Ngaka. You mentioned quite critical issues, the issue around the willingness to work, the ability and the capacity. And I'm tempted to ask you, but if time allows, after my panelists have engaged on the matter, to understand the fact that the municipalities alone cannot attain these reforms. So they need the support. particularly from the provincial government. So in the back of our mind, we know the role that the provincial government needs to play towards the municipalities. Now, I want you to tell us, but if time allows, not now, I'm allowing you time to think about it, that what is it that the Limpopo provincial government needs to do differently in order to ensure that municipalities are able to implement these reforms? And from a leadership perspective, what kind of leadership do municipalities need to stop being reactive and become proactive? With that said, I want to move on. We have established the importance of your office within the country, not necessarily our province alone. But from leadership, traditional leadership perspective, what relationship do you think should be there between the traditional authority and the municipality under these new reforms? And what are the gaps currently?
You see, at the moment, the problem is that it depends on the will of the mayor or the politician that I'm going to have a good relationship with Mushatwa Mamabolo or Mushatwa Rihad. It should be a policy. It must be written that the person should be active and make sure that he brings services to the rural areas. Sometimes, if you want to work together, a person must come to the traditional council and say, we are going to start the road from here to this side. And then you call people and then say, now they are going to start a road from here to that side. Rather than to say, a person calls his own political party. Yeah, belong and way on. Abuja, the comrades, comrade, now I'm going to start a road from here to the other side. If it goes that way, we don't know what this person is doing here. So for us to influence this development, if he can come to us, then we also call the people, because we have the power. These people trust us much. We tell them that there's going to be a road from here to here. It's going to be 1 kilometer or it's going to be 2 kilometers. But if these people don't know whether it's going to be 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers, they just see people going up and down, they don't know what they are doing, then that is a problem. So at the moment, it's not something that is compelled to the municipalities. And the other thing that I think is important, it's not an insult to our people who are in council. I think government is doing well to say a person who wants to be a councillor, that person should have at least matric. At one stage, we had a councillor who had only Form 1 in our area. You know what this person does? The person feels all the power belongs to me. Doesn't think about these people. Doesn't think about any other person. Doesn't think about the pastor. The person thinks about himself. That now I'm having the power. And I can do anything. When there's something that should be done at the municipality, instead of informing these people that there's going to be this or that, the person fears to come to the people and say, let's go and do this. Do you think about Batuba, Bazanamo University, a Form 1 student, is a problem. The person must have at least matric. It's better. This person will be able to say, now we are reading, this is a new policy. The new policy says, you see, all the time we were having 20%. The new policy says now we're going to have 30% of the participation of traditional leaders in municipalities. But if this person doesn't understand, obviously there's nothing that we can get. First one to participate in the council. The person will go out and sit there and talk about other things that side. Because the person doesn't understand, which is a problem. Some of the comrades, when you talk about this, information. This is an insult. Grade 12 fella, next time, Go CoGTA kwa. I know there are courses that these people are doing, but the diploma ja fapa. But if from one student, okamuisha uri the diploma na mola uri the diploma jerifi. Now I think it's important, really it's important, and we've been saying this many times.
Yeah.
Or batuba, even batuba just go. But you have go. They can help us. You mustn't sit back, go sit in Jamra or no. But Barturisha, Pabula Kamuartanga ona. Look what a bank about cancel, ata. But like you did with but guess what the councillor must say? We are going to have this. In this village, we are going to have this. In the other village, we are going to have this. Then these people must have information. But yeah.
I think one important information, or rather one important advice that we must take from Khoshi, we must not sit back. Because the reason why Rebalima Form 1 as our leaders is because they're not sitting back. They stand for the role. Those who have capabilities are sitting back. Now, Professor Nguna, with the reforms being described, now I want you to offer a realistic taste of things as an academic. Do you think with the current institutional, financial, and governance condition of our municipalities, we are going to attain these reforms?
Yeah, I would like to shift slightly beyond given the current form, because they've got the envisaged form which is a vision. And I'll take from what Khoshi was telling. Khoshi was telling the real, he was giving the picture of what is happening down there in terms of research. And most of the outputs which we have to do from our side, I have to bridge what Khoshi have been raising very seriously, and then the situation can a little bit go somewhere. But given the financial measures and status, of course the white paper is reflecting that this need to be addressed. And of course I'm glad the DM have indicated that there need to be quite a number of instruments which need to be dealt with in terms of legislation and other issues which are becoming a barrier. I know that DM, you'll bear with me that it appears local governments are heavily regulated, but we need to address it and align with the real issues on the ground. So coming back to your question, Prof, of course, yes, we need a very clear bridge in terms of what we are having here. The people who are facing me, who are my students being addressed by the DM today, that are we involved to go in there and make a change and a difference which will address what Khoshi was telling, because the moment you are not involved, then that's where things go awry. People who are having Form 1, they will come in the space which you're supposed to be there as potential administrators and professionals which are being addressed here. So saying that, Prof, I think that this is doable, it can be done, but we need to have a willingness and be involved. To an extent that I always raise it to my students that are you involved in the local government? Are you going in there and be involved so that we can avoid the challenges which we are having? So this is doable.
Thank you, Prof.
It's doable.
Thank you, Prof. And I want to challenge our students, given what's been said today. If you are doing local government and your lecturer is not saying anything about what has been said today, then you know you are not in the right class, because this needs to be part of our curriculum. And with that said, if you are to graduate and still sit back, it means you have undermined our teachings as well as the wording of Khoshi, stop sitting back. Dr. Masemola, ke le file potšišo tše pedi, but ke nyako le gopotša gore it's 2:10, so di arabeng, ke a leboga.
Yeah, no, thank you once more, Program Director. I think firstly, I just want to agree with what Khoshi was saying. To elaborate it very briefly on what we seek to achieve through the introduction of this compact. Because the question is, how do we ensure meaningful participation of traditional leaders in the affairs of municipalities? It is not about okay, the numbers is one part of it, that we must increase the threshold of their sittings in municipal councils. That is one part. But in terms of the real content, what does it mean? So the compact that we seek to provide a framework, which by tomorrow, when we conclude the MINMEC by whatever time in the evening, we should be able to rise with a minimum of what should go into each and every compact of all municipalities throughout the country where there are traditional institutions to address exactly the concerns that CoGTA has raised. One, just as an example from my side, before an IDP will be or could be finalized, what should be the role, should become the role of the traditional leaders in that area? They shouldn't just see it as a by the way issue. They must say, yes, from my area, from my place, I see there are these 3 projects, I agree, that they are going to the budget. So there must be that understanding that it's not going to be a passive participation where leaders of municipalities will just come and walk you through this thing for compliance purposes. That's the first thing. The second thing, when a budget is supposed to be finalized, what then becomes your role as traditional leaders? You've got to be able to come closer and agree and differ and find each other at the end of the day without being disruptive both sides, but fully agreeing that when this budget is going to be approved, you know what does it represent in terms of your area. 3, if projects have been identified for your own area, okay, you can't sit in the procurement as an institution. But when the project starts to be implemented, what becomes the role of the traditional leader? Hand over of a contractor, continuous monitoring of this project steering committee formulation and establishment, including the actual monitoring and evaluation of that project to its logical conclusion, so that you don't have incomplete projects that affect your own people. So you've got to come closer as part of that compact, tightly so. Matters of community safety, how do you work with the police through your municipality on some of these matters? Ward committees, what does it mean to have a ward committee? What is the role of the traditional leaders in the ward committees, but what becomes the role of the ward committees and the councillor in terms of traditional councils, so vice versa. There has to be a tight relationship, which is a matter of must. And many other things, ceremonial work, where project, so it's not going to be a by the way, there will be elaborated and enumerated that these are non-negotiables. If you say no as a traditional leader, they must come and persuade you until you find each other. That is what we are trying to fuse the two, so that there is that appreciation, including even minimum financial resources, because the law says to the extent that the council can afford, it must also empower its traditional institution to do minimum work. Those are the things that we must do partly. The last point, what must be done by provinces and national government to support municipalities? I think that's basically part of the things that I was also trying to say earlier on in my presentation. Limpopo, compared to other provinces, is doing very well. They are basically, in fact, I could say is one problem municipality in the province, and which is Tabazimbi. The rest have got their own problems, but they are manageable. They are able to work. Tabazimbi is outstanding because it has become a national focus point where we are in and out of that space. The provinces generally in the country, what is expected of them is through a framework arrangement, through platforms of engagement. For instance, premiers have what they call a premiers mayors forums, where the premier as the head of government sits with his or her counterparts, mayors, to do what? Together with their traditional leaders. In fact, part of this compact, we are saying it must be authorized by the premier at the end of the day. Once it is developed, the premier must say, this is what is going to be binding us. To do what? The premier will be binding, committing their provincial administration through various departments, including municipalities and leaders of royalty, to work together to make sure that all what would be included in their budgets, in their plans, including what I said earlier on, that when a district mayor or a local mayor stands to speak to the public, they must not only speak about their own IDP projects, which are municipally funded. IDP projects are supposed to include Department of Education, Department of Public Works, almost every project, which therefore then brings direct answer to your question. What must they do? They must actively participate, not just by theory, and that is why this matter has been a problem. So through this reviewed policy, we are making it an obligatory. In fact, the president gave us an instruction in CoGTA to formulate regulations that forces departments to report on a quarterly basis on the things that they are going to be doing through a district development model. And those quarterly reports are going to be taken to Parliament. So CoGTA will go to Parliament and say, this quarter, the following national, provincial department per province, per local municipality, this is the extent to which they could go. These are the culprits, those that did not. And it becomes a public information. The whole of the Republic will get to know that this minister, this MEC, is not supporting municipalities in his province, or this minister nationally is not doing that. So that accountability is not forced by those that are with us in government. Even the public can now tomorrow say, we don't think Minister Masemola is ready to lead us because the reports to Parliament in terms of their support to municipalities says his or her department continuously did absolutely nothing. He doesn't cooperate. So we're forcing each other now to do what? To serve the people of South Africa without any hesitation, without any ambiguity. So we're pushing leaders back to where they are supposed to be and being what? To serve the people of South Africa so that everyone else elsewhere could know that this minister, this MEC is working or is not working. And when the demand comes, it shouldn't be politicized. The people must judge correctly by standards that are set by their own system. So this document, that's exactly where it's placing the provinces and as well as national in relation to municipal performance and support.
No, thank you very much, Doc. And there is hope because, you know, you use the word must. They must. And if we recall well, Bukhoshi Barile, this must stop being a discretion of a mayor. So that says the two are now eyeing for the same thing, and that gives us hope. Kitche motsotso ke le leboge Kgoshi, maoto a lena a se mang le mang wa amogelang. Ke leboge Dr. Masemola and wish him safe travels. Professor Nkuna, tatana ya cancer. Dean must expect those Form 6 as you promised, or you will infuse this into our curriculum. Thank you. Jebs.
Thank you, ma'am. Prof. Sibanda, I think as a faculty, we must also venture into doing podcast. As you can see that we've got good facilitators in the department, in the school. But, ladies and gentlemen, fellow students, colleagues, it is that time now I will allow at least for us to ask 2 or 3 questions to DM abasepele ke haimo le he plane ka bashia airport ya rena mo daramo ai busy ya lorta ba phone ra ba botsa re ba emenyana ba emele DM la tseba ngere SA link ke taxi. Colleagues, particularly from my students, I will want you to make comments or ask a particular question. However, allow me to limit you simply because of time to only allow 3 questions. So I will take 1 from there, 1 from here, and 1 from here. However, we are not limiting you for raising your questions. Kindly write down your questions. You will submit them to the department, and we will ensure that we facilitate them to a particular speaker that needs to respond to your question, and we will revert back to you. But simply because of time, I know this is important, we can have the whole day. In the next public lecture, we may have more time and more hours. Can I take this gentleman in a striped shirt? Sorry to just point you like that. If you can unmute, and then we'll take you. In this group, can I, there is only 2 hands. Let me take a lady for now, so that we can have a variety. I will take you, ma'am. In this one, I will take the first one that is seated at the front. The rest of you colleagues, you will write questions for us, isn't it? Unfortunately, I will only have to take 3. However, let's take the first 3 and then we will decide again. Let us not make it an issue. Yes, you may unmute your mic and shoot. Audio. You can come down quickly. Same as you, please kindly come down, colleagues, fellow students, kindly come down. While you are coming down, I will allow now another round for only 3. Right? Is there a person that side? Yes, I will take you. Please come. This side. Come, my brother. And come. So that is the only 2 rounds, colleagues. Let us quickly make it snappy.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Leo Pash and greet Homu. You might give me a lift going home. My question is on the proposed white paper. It's a review. Don't you think there is a little gap in terms of the skills absorbment within communities and within municipalities through the tendering system, where the exploitation, because I'm a scholar of Marx, the exploitation of skills by tenderpreneurs whom they hire people outside and cut costs and manipulate the costs, particularly on the laborers and the skills. Don't you think it's important to prioritize insourcing in municipalities for the benefit of our people and to deal with the issue of exploitation of our work?
Okay, thank you, Mchana.
Good afternoon. My name is Mabara Malashela, and I just recently graduated from a Master of Public Administration, which examined the roles of traditional leaders and ward councillors. And my question to you, sir, is that in my findings that will usher me to this question, I realized that traditional leaders are rather given a backseat when it comes to the roles that they play in the provision of low-cost housing. My study area was in Limpopo, and I realized that they're given a backseat towards the processes that they are involved in when it comes to the provision of low-cost housing. So now, my understanding is that these 2 organs of state are 2 important organs of state, and traditional leaders are also seen as very important in terms of the roles that they play. I've realized in my findings that community members, especially the elders, trust their traditional leaders more than they trust their ward councillors. They find it more difficult when it comes to approaching their ward councillors and approaching their ward committees. They'd rather go and sit with the traditional council and sit with the traditional leaders in terms of the the way that they are dissatisfied in terms of how the services are being provided. And so now I'd like to understand how the idea of bringing in traditional leaders into this forum really seem nice on paper, but I want to understand the steps that are going to be practical in bringing them in and actually seeing them on the ground, not from the process of just giving them the land to occupy and the permission to occupy the land, but actually the ushering into the homes, into the low-cost housing. How are those steps going to actually be highlighted?
Okay, thank you, noted. Thank you. The other fellow students or colleagues that are coming, please, with due respect, I acknowledge this is fun and good, and I would like us to continue. Kindly stick precisely to the question. Right? Thank you.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Foshnid Maponya, Master's Candidate, Development Planning and Management. Minister, it is deeply commendable that government is making notable progress towards reviewing and improving the role of traditional leadership, as even though they are recognized under Section 211 and 212, it is evidently clear that 156, in terms of the section, negates them to a participatory role and not really a decision-making role. So my question to you is particularly in relation to spatial planning and land governance. How do you envision these changes and reforms to actually look like? Because one of the things that has continuously impeded development is the failure to actually establish the dynamics in terms of overlapping responsibilities, demarcation of roles and responsibilities. Who will be allocating the land? Who will be making approvals? And in what ways will the boundaries be actually elucidated in the new reforms to ensure that the issues that we are facing of flood-prone human settlements, spatial distortions, as well as environmentally unfit conditions prevail. Also the issue of rural economic stagnation, because if land is just allocated without clear layout, it ultimately hinders development. So how do you envision that reform in relation to spatial planning and land governance? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Once more, my fellow student. I know you will want to give a scenario and a background. However, in the process of you giving that scenario and the background, you are actually answering yourself in the process. So stick to the question so that you can get a clear answer from the panelists. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Greetings. My name is Bokanga Chawapala, and in this part of time, I'll just put out 3 short questions. So, number 1 will be.
I will only restrict you to 1 and allow you to give me the rest of the 2, and then you will be given response on that. Please,
Okay.
for the sake of time. Ne?
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
On when the Deputy Minister mentioned on how small municipalities are only delegated to 10% since they're unable to gather the rest of the funds to fund their operational costs, how will this issue be addressed? Will we be looking at maybe increasing the national allocation of these small municipalities in order to cover those operational costs? Or with chapter 2 on the white people of local government, on when it includes the new category of a larger scale of a municipality, will the municipalities be given a lesser role or a lesser mandate in order to cover those costs with the money that they are given? Or will they be supported through this new creation of a new category municipality, as you've mentioned, of a new category municipality, which will be categorized as a metropolitan, but it's not exactly a metropolitan? I wanted clarity on that one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. My name is Vincent Makamu. Basically, I want to ask Dr. Masemola 2 or 3 questions. More especially looking at the fact that on his response, he somewhere spoke about the ability and the will. So this brought a huge question to me, that he, as a government official, does he believe that the current government which we are having, does it have the will? I'm saying this looking at the fact that the Freedom Charter of South Africa, which was also written by the ANC, which is the current government, was written in 1955. And even today, when you look into the Freedom Charter, some of the things are said there in the Freedom Charter. It said that doors of learning shall open. And when looking at the career of Dr. Masemola, started to be politically active from 2001. And that was the the phase in which the current government of the ANC were busy facing out.
Okay. Let's agree on something. I like the narration. You are only teaching me that that Masemola is a government official. I acknowledge that. I will go and search whether he's a government official or not. Kindly stick to the question. However, the narration and everything that you want to put, I'm not limiting you. But for the sake of time, you will give it to us, we will give it to the office of the DM, and they will respond. Kindly stick to your question, please.
Thanks very much for police engaging. I wanted to ask, in fact, do you believe that this current government which are having, with the ability and the will, do we have the will as the government that we are going to change these reforms which are talking about? Looking at the fact that even the laws, the chapter which we did 1955, even today we haven't changed anything. What's going to make the government want to implement now what they failed to implement, what was in the Freedom Charter in 1955, and up to date is not implemented? The second one is...
Okay. Remember the rule. I'm only limiting you. Remember, okay. Audience, let's agree on something. With due respect, isn't it? I would like to allow you to continue until 7 o'clock. But unfortunately, because of issues of national importance, we acknowledge that the DM has to leave. So I've already taken 30 minutes of his time. So let's allow the process to unfold like that. Okay? Bring those two, and then we'll forward them. Not now, but we are going to the next
It's
speaker.
just short one.
No, please.
Short.
Please. You see that wheel that we are talking about? If we put rules, let's respect them.
Thanks very
you.
much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Revolutionary greetings, Deputy Minister. My question is directed to the Deputy Minister and is based on accountability. The new white paper talks about reform, but how will it strengthen consequences for municipal officials and council who fail to deliver services or fail audit outcomes year after year? Thank you very much.
Sweet and short. All right. Now, this is what I'm going to do. Allow me to give orders to the DM today. DM, as and when you try to answer my honorable DM, try to summarize all questions into one, because when we go specifically to each, we might fall into that time issue. Thank you, DM.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you very much, students, for those questions. I wish I have enough time to have a conversation with yourselves until the last person speaks. But let me make a commitment. I was talking to Professor Nguna here that I am more than available to come back, including where it is possible and there's a need to be in a classroom, share a platform or some topics with some of your lecturers. So anytime I'm available to come back to engage. The first one spoke about in-sourcing. How do we make it possible that in-sourcing does not necessarily cripple, not in-sourcing, outsourcing through tender system, does not cripple possibilities of job creation, because entrepreneurs do take advantage of what he was describing. We have taken a policy decision that to the extent that municipalities can afford, we are going to put minimum services that must be sourced internally in the municipalities as part and parcel of building a very capable state capacity, so much required to be able to perform those public functions without serious problems. So in-sourcing is what we believe in, because it is about building the capacity of the state, so that certain things like filling of potholes, fixing of bulbs in the streets, including elsewhere, that does not necessarily demand a tender. Officials in government who are employed as part and parcel of also creating opportunities for our young people to be employed, they must be there in their numbers in the system. So that discussion and that process is basically underway. and I'm looking forward to an introduction of a bill in Parliament that talks to the insourcing of some of the municipal functions to build the capacity of the state. That is the first one. The second point from Malashela, who spoke about her research study on the relationship between traditional leaders and ward committees. I think I tried to explain that part. Within the context of the reforms as it regards the strengthening of the role of traditional leaders in the municipal governments, including municipal politics. It's not only going to strengthen traditional leaders in the municipal councils only, because once it finds concrete expression at that level, both provincially and nationally, the institution is going to take a much stronger, position with regard to matters of governance. So I fully concur with a sentiment that says many people in rural communities, to the extent where things are at the moment, they seem to be trusting their traditional leaders more than their political leaders. And I think I just gave you a report from the IEC, which they gave us yesterday, which confirms that traditional leaders are ranked number 4 in the equation of 14 structures and bodies that have been assessed by citizens in terms of their trust deficit. So I fully concur with you on that part, but fundamentally, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa recognizes municipalities, including traditional leaders. What we are trying to do, because both of them, they are organs of state, they have a responsibility. Traditional leaders are defined differently because we can't convert traditional institutions into party political institutions. Once we do that, we will basically create an unimaginable problem for these institutions. So what is important is how do you bring your indigenous governance system together with your institutions that are created by the democratic setup together so that we can serve our people without any problem. So that research, I think it is important because it is going to help us when we come to what I referred to earlier on, that after the municipal elections, we are going to look for South Africans who must be able to come and help us in doing what? In deepening democracy understanding together with ward councillors, running training programs, exchange information, peer review mechanisms. So we have a candidate here who is well placed to come and help us as we move forward. Lemona Maputi. Yeah, she might be very helpful as we move forward with regard to peer review mechanisms on how do we strengthen these institutions at the lower level. We are saying in this white paper policy document, I think you must get the main document and read it properly in that aspect of ward committees and traditional councils. It says, that document, we need to find a mechanism where ward committees, through their ward councillors, because ward committees are not independent, they are committees attached to a ward councillor. Without a ward councillor, there will be no ward committee. So that system at that level of communities, they must find participation in the traditional councils. And this compact we're talking about, we're going to force a particular arrangement where when traditional councils sit, there must be someone from the municipality, either a ward councillor or a designate through a ward committee or somebody that the system of municipality will agree that this one, based on the dynamics in that community, so and so can best represent us, then gets the program of meetings of that traditional council, and vice versa. When a councillor together with the ward committee meet, they will be incomplete without the role of the traditional leader, because we've got to fuse these matters. When the mayors come to their localities, they must be these two together. Ward committee, traditional leaders, and no longer a mayor's prerogative alone to deal with these matters. That's where we're basically trying to take the system to strengthen it. Spatial development, land use, and administration, who is in charge? It's a very complex discussion. I must admit that this one is not going to be an easy process, and Hoshi will agree with me, because it is about land control, it is about land tenure system, it is about land administration, it is about spatial planning and land use management, which at the moment, that law can't be easily implemented because there are issues between us and the traditional leaders in the country. It has been muted, it has been put on hold, it has been freezed, that law in terms of implementation. But what we are going to try to nurse through this process is not the total control on land administration. It is not joint control on land management. No, we've got to agree on a process where we develop a land use plan. Where do we designate land, a precinct for business? Where do we allocate land for settlement? Because you need services, water, electricity, and other related services, so that when people reside there, they must not reside and we plan thereafter, because your traditional institution would have decided to settle people without proper planning. That planning is a municipal function. How many stands, which routes must be determined for public routes, where should be a school, where should be a clinic, where should be a police station, where should be churches, all these sorts of things are municipal functions. But we are saying they must not do it alone. Them and their traditional leaders must agree on a proper land use plan that talks to human settlements, including many other areas. We are still handling a bigger question on the land tenure system and how do we move into the future with regard to that. There's a complex discussion, Hoshi, which it might not be for this meeting today, that says as we move into the future, there is an argument that says many villages today, comparatively speaking, in terms of property development, they are more better than some of our old townships. And in terms of revenue generation of municipalities, they pay absolutely zero because of the tenure system that is there. The townships, they are actually supposed to carry the costs and the money that goes into the coffers of the municipality. Because of the character of urban and rural, the urban people who are in a township have got to subsidize development of those that are in the rural areas in villages where they can't contribute to revenue because of the tenure system. So there's a much bigger debate that says, do you change the tenure system in rural areas? There are pros and cons of that. It's not for today. The debate will still come. Our traditional leaders will tell us what form of a mechanism must come closer to actually allow those property developers in terms of households with big structures paying absolutely little cent to the running of the municipality, yet they got services, water, electricity, roads, and many other issues. So it's a much bigger debate, but for purposes of this white paper, it's how do we use land in villages and rural areas working together between municipalities and the traditional institution. That is that part. The second part question there talked about the finances. What do we do with small municipalities and so on and so on? Very briefly, what we are suggesting here is that, and you must go and read Constitution when you live here, Section 214. It talks about the distribution of the nationally collected revenue. South African Revenue Services is an instrument that collects revenue on behalf of government. Once that money is put in the kit, there are proportions that are based on formula determined by Financial and Fiscal Commission, which my sister here, Mali Jeng, has just been appointed in the past few weeks as the current deputy chair going into the future. Now, that money from the 1998 white paper, the assumption was municipalities will get 10% of that money. 90%, they must fund themselves. So we're saying it is not enough, this 10%. There has to be an increase. And where then becomes the baseline is what the task team that has been established by CoGTA and National Treasury, located in National Treasury, is doing a research process that finally it will come and say, we maybe can increase the allocation from 10% to either 15 or 12 or 13, whichever formula ultimately. That will have resultant financial increase. SALGA has done its own work in this area. They are proposing that in order to fill the gap of this financial deficit, you need about 36 billion rands additional to the funding stream from the national fiscus, which means if such an understanding can finally be arrived at, it could result in the increase on the proportion and the funding to individual municipalities. So it's work that is underway. which is very comprehensive. It's not only about this, it is about the point I was raising on revenue, it's about new other streams, about efficiency, about better effectiveness of utilizing what we have, and therefore, comparatively speaking, in a consolidated manner, this is what could work for your municipality where you come from home, where it's rural or it's urban, and they can get better funding. Does government have a will or on the capacity? That's what Makamu here said. And I said, here we have got a future leader here who actually articulates very complex theoretical matters of war revolution. The Freedom Charter remains, and I think I wish I could be called back here for a political discussion on some of these matters, and we have more time to talk. Because what Makamu says is that first thing first, South Africans ought to understand that before many other political parties could be formed, there was only one political party in this country that fought for freedom and democracy. And in 1955, it adopted the Freedom Charter. And when the Freedom Charter was adopted, it was regarded as the maximum development plan which the envisaged democratic government in the new South Africa, it will have to do for its own citizens. The doors of learning and culture shall be open, people shall govern until the last clause. Now, to the extent that things are at the moment, the government I'm representing and the organization to which I sit in the National Executive Committee, Freedom Charter remains the maximum development plan of the current system of government guided by the National Democratic Revolution. There's no ambiguity about the essence and the importance and the centrality of the Freedom Charter. The question is, from 1959 when the PAC was formed, coming this way today where we are at the moment, there has been circumstances and political developments that necessitated different interpretation, orientation, including how people took firm positions, whether this charter is still relevant or not. And I suppose this question, if we were to have discussion further, listen to Makamu, he has got his own ideas, whether currently the Freedom Charter is still on track as our plan or not. Yes, it remains the fundamental development plan, maximum to that extent, of the current administration, including not only the administration, but of the party that is leading the current administration. That remains our maximum plan. Other issues are of political importance in terms of characterization of the current moment and the state of the revolution, whether we are on track, whether we are not on track, what is required moving into the future. And I think that's exactly where Makamu is. The will is there, the ability is there, the capacity is there, there are constraints, both national, including international dynamics. There are many factors at play that contributes towards the delay, the detour, the constraints that characterizes the actual realization of what the charter says. Finally, whether there will be consequence management or what, in fact, that is what has brought us to many problems. And I'm very excited to hear this student here talking about a very serious matter of performance. Because if consequence management is not infused in the performance agreements, including how oversight is done. Okay, Hoshi, you were giving an example about a councillor without matric, with Form 1. Now, if this councillor has got to go and do oversight over administration and determine whether this director has underperformed or not, and therefore consequence management must be instituted, how will that happen? So it's a function of many other issues, but at the center, if you read that main document, it is very well articulated that non-performance must not be celebrated. Poor performance must not be promoted. And therefore, people must be held accountable on the day-to-day work that they do, and therefore account for what they do. If they can't perform, there has to be consequence management. And that is a function of leadership. And that's why I said earlier on that everything stands and falls on leadership. That's how I can briefly respond to this matter. But let me commit myself. If you so wish to have me back here, because I think I really, I belong to this university. I'm part and parcel of this university. And therefore, it's important for me to always come back here, contribute to its academic work, contribute to the cognitive enhancement of our students. So I'm more than available at any given time. Even if it means coming for classes in the evening, I'm more than willing, depending on my work schedule. I belong here, I'm part of you. So don't see me as a visitor. Yeah, I'm not a visitor, I'm part of the university. Okay.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. On that note, before... Okay. Now there is a change in the program. That Malachi, before we come to you, can I hijack your slot and ensure that I invite Prof. Sibanda to the stage so that we can be able to give our visitors a token of appreciation in a cultural way. Thank you. All right. Do you want to see some smiles? Why? Yes, dear. Thank you, Khosi. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Mempile. Thank you. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a round of applause to the DM and Kochi? Kochi, can I leave? Last people are leaving. All right, ladies and gentlemen, can we kindly proceed and call Professor Malachi to the stage to give a vote of thanks. Prof.
James. It's difficult to do this, especially good afternoon, colleagues and students. Mr. Slelo was actually whispering and saying, we are hungry. Please, can you try to be fast? So I've prepared actually something that could take us probably around 20 minutes. But look, no, don't stress. I'm just going to be fast, just less than 60 seconds, I'll be done. When I look at your faces, I see hunger. Don't stress, I'm hungry as well. I'm not gonna go through the whole speech. I will just thank you guys for being here. I will thank the one and only His Majesty, Mushat. Allow me, colleagues and students, to also thank the marketing department. I saw them, they are here. Thank you for the great job that you are doing behind the scenes. Let me also thank the HODs, Maudu, I saw her here. Oh, yes, she's here, Maudu, Professor Mukwele from Development and Planning. I will also thank the Department of Public Administration, more particularly the Thought Leadership Committee, for arranging such a wonderful event. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know, Prof. Re tshwere ke tlala. I have to make some following announcements, ladies and gentlemen. And in the closing remarks, we have just seen and we've just learned that leaders are readers. I'm so profound to sit next to you, Kgoshi Dikgale. Yeah, in the olden days, Kgoshi ne re re, ingwana man loyi, ingwana tšao ke e hosi, that's it. But Kgoshi tsa kajeko di a bona gore sekolo se botlhokwa, a re yeng sekolong re bala gore Kgoshi a kgone go kwešiša tse di kwadilweng ka mo le tsona ke. Ke a leboga. There is another thing, Kgoshi re tlo e tseyang very important, the issue of IGR. We will make sure that our students that are seated here, as they exit the university and be employed in different sectors in the public sector, they are well trained. And in the new curriculum that we are going to do, Prof. Chauke, we must introduce self-management, where we are going to teach ethics. Because we quietly, frankly know that our local government has deteriorated simply because of issues of ethics. And where are my students? Do I have people that I teach here in this class? By show of hand. They are here. I hope we have concluded and we have done for the semester. If you were listening, students of local government, all of you, the semester is closed because everything that was uttered here today, we have closed the chapter. I will want us to allow our dignitaries, our VIPs, staff members to leave the procession first, followed by the choir. And then while we do that, all of us that have been drinking, Prof, are they strategic? No, natural water. Please let us leave with our bottles, and there is a container there where we are going to dump them. While our students, there will be lunch that is going to be served right in front of the R40 here, while dignitaries and staff members will proceed to the staff cafeteria. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Give yourself a round of applause. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you.